Different. How is it different? The Ice Empress snapped, her scorpion-like tail bristling behind her. They're all despicable, shameless creatures. What could he possibly have given? Before she could finish, the Snow Empress made a light, effortless motion of her wrist. More than 20 10,000-year mystic ice marrows appeared, each one radiating a faint but dazzling aura of pure energy. The Ice Empress's insults died in her throat. Her golden eyes widened. Instinctively, she reached out and touched one of the marrow pieces, feeling the uncompromising bone-deep cold surging from it. Disbelief and caution warred in her expression as she glanced back at the Snow Empress, searching for confirmation. The Snow Empress only nodded slightly. Her own gaze remained calm, but her voice grew serious. Do you understand now? He truly is not like other humans. The Ice Empress stared from the pile of mystic ice marrows to the Snow Empress's face. She ground her teeth. Generous? A human handing out treasures like this was impossible. There had to be some hidden motive. She shot to her feet, determination and distrust flaring in her golden eyes. I don't believe it, unless I see it with my own eyes. Snow Empress, take me with you to see him. I want to see what kind of charm this human used on you. The Snow Empress hesitated only a beat. She had explained everything already. Why did the Ice Empress still insist on coming? A small, disquieting thought crossed her mind. Could this be what he expected? She fell silent, considering. After a long moment, she sighed and said with quiet resolve, Very well, but when the time comes, Binger, you are not allowed to attack him or try to harm him. Do you understand? What if he tries to hurt me? The Ice Empress demanded, defiant. He won't harm you, but... The Snow Empress pursed her lips and left the rest unsaid. After another pause, she stood and spoke more softly. I cannot describe exactly what he looks like. You will see and understand then. For now, Binger, be my protector. The Ice Empress faltered. Protector? I will have to undergo tribulation, the Snow Empress said. My 700,000-year heavenly tribulation. That had been one of the young man's instructions to her. Undergo tribulation in the land of extreme north. Compared with other places, the odds of failure here were negligible. He did not want any complications for her. Under the Snow Empress's clear, cold gaze, a faint smile brushed her lips. Ming City, deep inside the Hall of Worship's laboratory. Within a cold, forbidden array, a hunchbacked, savage-looking evil spirit master thrashed and begged, eyes wild and bloodshot. My lord, please, let me go. I'm innocent. I swear I'm innocent. They forced me. Please. He had watched several of his former colleagues die slow, methodical deaths. His mental defenses had long since broken. Kong Ming'an ignored the pleas. He regarded the man with cool impatience. He made a mental note. In future, after confirming some specimen was material, he ought to cut out the specimen's tongue first, would simplify the processing. He raised his mental force and patted the 10,000-soul banner he had confiscated. The banner stirred of its own accord. A hazy, gray beam of light shot out and plunged into the struggling man's body, extracting his soul and drawing it into the banner. The pitiful pleading stopped mid-sentence. Kong Ming'an extended his hand. Ghostly blue threads of combined mental force and spirit power flowed forth. Using a method of controlling the undead that Elder Yi had modified, the threads temporarily replaced the missing soul and took control of the still active body. The man's limbs stiffened like a puppet on strings as he rose. At Kong Ming'an's command, 2 yellow, 3 purple, and 2 black spirit rings manifested beneath his feet. Meanwhile, the chaotic, malevolent spirit power that had once belonged to the man surged back out of his body. Kong Ming'an shifted his thought and caused the body to directly activate its martial soul true body. Immediately, a wolf's howl, laced with domination, ripped through the lab. The frame swelled and contorted until it became a massive, terrifying wolf. Dark red fur, eyes flickering with bloodlust, an aura thick with the scent of carnage. The bloodthirsty soul wolf, an evil spirit that grows by devouring flesh and souls. If it had reached the spirit saint level, the original spirit master had been far from innocent. Kong Ming'an watched the beast with a faint, analytical light in his eyes. A layer of pure ice blue luster crept across his skin as he entered an elementalization state. The extreme cold aura spread outward. He formed the energy into a tiny, exquisite scalpel. In an instant, the ice crystal scalpel became streaks of cold light, almost impossible to track with the naked eye, and he began to dissect along the energy structure and meridians of the martial soul true body. A faint sizzling of ice blades cutting through energy echoed through the lab. In moments, the gigantic wolf's body was etched with countless fine, perfectly straight ice blue lines, as if measured and sliced by the most precise instrument, an energy level Lingqi. Yet under Kong Ming'an's mental control and the binding of the spirit threads, the martial soul true body somehow retained a grotesque animation. Kong Ming'an regarded his work, a note of confirmation in his tone. It's basically similar to my previous discoveries. Martial soul true bodies, elementalization, and chi and blood transformation share commonalities and may be combinable. He murmured the observation to himself and moved on. The dissection had been peripheral to his real experiment. He let the ghostly blue threads tremble. The spirit power within the controlled body began to act upon the spirit rings in a special way. This was not a violent ring explosion that shattered the rings to release energy, but a subtler process. The threads gently unbound the spirit rings from the energy they contained, coaxing the vast spirit power inside them to flow back into the host in an orderly fashion, like opening floodgates. Kong Ming'an had named this gentle technique ring dissolution. A massive, chaotic influx of spirit power of many different attributes surged into the meridians, merging with the already corrupted, blood-filled mix of the evil spirit master's energy. The result was an immediate, violent reaction. The spirit master's body trembled and swelled grotesquely. His meridians and bones were crushed bit by bit beneath the pressure of the energy, and his flesh cracked inch by inch. Kong Ming'an paid it no mind. After all, this was a one-time consumable, meant to be used to its limit. Dark blue filaments began forcibly to guide the liquid spirit power inside the evil spirit master, compressing it gradually and transforming it from liquid into solid. The mass started to rotate on its own, absorbing and purifying energy as it went. Kong Ming'an was attempting to condense a soul core. For most spirit masters, forming a soul core is an extremely dangerous, delicate process. One structural flaw, and the core can explode, leaving no body behind. But for Kong Ming'an, the risk was far smaller. None of the energy constructs he created could truly lose control. He gave a gentle push, and the solidified spirit power settled into a steady rotation. The remnants of the evil spirit master's own spirit power, the mental force left after the 10,000 Souls banner had extracted his soul, the vast energy released when the rings were freed, and even the energy used to form his martial soul true body, everything was fed into the nascent core, accelerating its condensation. After some time, the rapidly rotating mass reached a critical point, collapsed inward, its light constricted and then stabilized. Finally, a tiny crystal, no bigger than a fingernail, roughly a quarter the size of a normal titled Douluo soul core, floated where the spirit master had stood, its surface woven with bizarre, shifting colors. The soul core had formed. Kong Ming'an dispelled his elementalization and returned to his normal form, letting out a soft sigh. A touch of fatigue creased his brow. He extended a hand covered in a layer of neutral spirit power and gently lifted the new soul core. A faint blue glow flickered in his eyes as he inspected it closely. His brow tightened. "The structure's fine," he murmured, "but the essence is mixed and impure. The energy is hard to mobilize and hides many dangers. And the improvement in quality is about the same as the last few. Is there an upper limit to how much a single soul core can improve spirit quality? Without a baseline, it's hard to be certain, but at least it can't assimilate and unify different types of energy. This is a failed product." He shook his head, sealed the flawed crystal, and casually tossed it onto the failed product's shelf. Several similar containers were already arranged there, each holding soul cores of various sizes and hues. He rubbed his temples and glanced at the now empty materials shelf, but had no desire to continue experimenting that night. Not far away, he spotted Meng Hongchen asleep across the workbench. He paused and then walked over quietly. Meng Hongchen stirred, her lashes fluttering. She sat up with a yawn. "Finished?" she asked. "Yes, just finished." Kong Ming'an stepped up to her. She rubbed her eyes, leaned against him, and wrapped her arms around his torso, nuzzling her head against him. Her voice was still drowsy. "I'm still a little sleepy. Let me hug you for a bit." She closed her eyes again, Kong Ming'an said nothing. He lifted the young woman and carried her to the sofa in the rest area. He lay down first, then settled her in his arms. She shifted slightly, found a comfortable position, and resumed sleeping. He kept quiet, his hand at her waist, watching her. Meng Hongqian wore the moon-white uniform of the Sun Moon Royal Soul Engineer Academy. The fitted outfit outlined the young woman's curves. Paired with white stockings, she looked bright and lively. Asleep, she had an added, effortless charm. In short, she was very pretty. She had come to the lab to keep him company and help. Spending every day alone in the laboratory would eventually be a problem. But Meng wasn't a spirit beast like the Snow Empress, who could go decades without sleep. She was human and not particularly high in cultivation, so after several consecutive days, she'd grown drowsy. Kong Ming'an felt a twinge of mental fatigue himself. He hadn't reached any inhuman realm. Continuous research for a month or two still wore on him. Taking a nap seemed reasonable. He adjusted his hold, embraced Meng more securely, and closed his eyes. A few hours later, at the dining table in the rest area, Meng Hongqian was fully awake and in high spirits. She pushed a plate of food toward Kong Ming'an and sat down beside him. "Was the experiment successful?" she asked. "It succeeded," Kong Ming'an said softly. "The basic objective was met, but the extensions have some issues. Also, I've had a lot of materials delivered lately. It felt wasteful not to use them, which is why I got a bit carried away." Since he had led the Sun Moon team to victory in the Spirit Master Tournament, many factions had taken notice. Probes and inquiries came from various countries and organizations. Those were just information gathering and didn't bother him. What changed the situation was a bounty placed on him, and not a small one. That drew many desperados to try to kill him. The Holy Spirit Church's evil spirit masters were frequent attackers and had become an unusually steady source of experimental materials in his warehouse. Unfortunately for them, most who came to assassinate him vanished without a trace. Even several titled Douluo who attempted failed to return. Those inexplicable disappearances made people cautious, and the number of would-be assassins had dwindled compared to a month ago, which left him a little regretful. Other people would be restless and unable to eat or sleep if they had a bounty on their head, Meng said, leaning her chin on her hand. "Only you still get to feel regret." She pouted, then said, "I asked Sister Juzi to find out who placed the bounty. Guess who did it?" "Shrek," Kong Ming'an answered without thinking. Meng made an annoyed sound. "Did Sister Juzi tell you beforehand?" "Just a guess." He glanced at her expression and chuckled. "Shrek, or some people in Shrek, are obsessed with the glory of Shrek. They're furious that I wrecked their reputation. They'd love to tear me apart, though they wouldn't admit it openly. So they'd use the pretext that this child is of the Sun Moon. He will be a great threat in the future and must not be left alive, and quietly put out a bounty." "You seem to know Shrek quite well," Meng retorted, then added, "but can you guess who withdrew your bounty?" "My bounty was withdrawn." No, don't withdraw it, he thought inwardly. Then fewer materials would be delivered to his door. But when he saw Meng's serious face, he snapped to attention. "So who withdrew it?" Meng gave him an exasperated look, snorted, and said, "It was your clan's sister, Zhang Lexuan." "Her?" Kong Ming'an's mind flashed back to the last time Zhang Lexuan had leaned on him, a few months before. "Oh, your clan sister's been quite the sensation at Shrek lately," Miss Meng said, biting the last words off with a faintly amused tone. When the Shrek representative team came back, they were swarmed by students demanding to know why they lost, why they didn't protect Shrek's honor. Some of the team members couldn't hold themselves back and fired back. It turned into a shouting match, and one girl whose spirit was an evil fire phoenix actually started fighting, injuring more than 10 people at once. The spirit department dean stepped in and smothered the whole thing. But within a month, 4 of the Shrek 7 devils applied for early graduation. 2 went back to their sects and families. The other 2 were recruited directly by the Star Luo Empire. Everyone took that as desertion. Outrage spread among the students, and before long, all that anger fell on the remaining 3. Kong Ming'an had a pretty good idea who those 3 were. Curious, he asked, "And after that?" "Shrek covered it up, of course. It wasn't something to advertise. But your clan sister didn't sit idle. She kept digging into corruption inside Shrek, even without the legal authority to do it. While she was investigating, she found evidence that several elders had posted a bounty on you. She confronted them with the proof. Then, to prevent the scandal from growing and the rumor that Shrek can't accept defeat from spreading, the bounty was quietly taken down. I see. Kong Ming'an's expression softened with a twinge of regret. He was odd about the bounty being removed. Part of him was sorry to lose the challenge, but he certainly wouldn't have put one on himself. Their conversation wound down. He finished the meal before him and stood. Shall we, Miss Meng? If I remember right, next is checking your control over the soul skill module. The lab had run out of consumables, so there was no reason to linger. He liked experiments and the instant satisfaction when a result came through, but he couldn't live in the lab. He needed to get out sometimes. While Kong Ming'an ran a diagnostic on Miss Meng's soul skill module and strolled casually around the academy, two figures materialized beyond the city limits of Ming City. As the capital of the Sun Moon Empire and the continent's center for soul tool technology, Ming City had no walls. From a distance, the city was an endless sprawl, buildings spaced with almost architectonic order, roads cutting straight and true. Special soul tool arrays were woven through the streets and foundations, forming a lattice that wrapped the city and radiated steady spirit power fluctuations. Interesting, the silver-haired girl murmured. Her vast, covert mental force swept the city, and the clear purple of her eyes sparked with interest. She had to admit, grudgingly, that humanity surprised her. Since leaving the Stardew Great Forest, every step closer to Ming City had revealed deeper changes. In a few of her slumbers, tens of thousands of years had passed. Humans had advanced, even birthed gods in succession. Now it seemed another god might be on the cusp of being born. Humans, she whispered, contemplative. A golden figure darted into view beside her, excitement barely contained. Lord Sister, is this where we're going? It's so big. It feels different from other cities. The golden-haired girl's voice bubbled with vitality. The silver-haired girl watched her for a moment. There was, she realized, a faint resemblance in the set of their brows and eyes, 3 or 4 tenths the same, and despite herself, she couldn't stay annoyed. She asked softly, "Can you still sense the aura of that child of destiny?" "Yes," the golden-haired girl nodded, concentrated, then pointed toward the great city. "Roughly, over that way." The silver-haired girl understood. The luck bestowed on a child of destiny at birth was tightly bound to the child and often tethered to the place of its origin. Though the luck that had once been tied to the Emperor Auspicious Beast had been taken away, the beast's innate talent allowed her to perceive where that luck lingered. Using that trace, they had traveled from the Stardew Great Forest to Ming City, the capital of the Sun Moon Empire. She leaned forward. Brilliant silver streaks flared faintly through her purple eyes. An intuitive certainty settled over her. This newly born child of destiny would be a crucial key, one the plane itself had wagered on. The future hung on that key, and part of that future would affect the spirit beasts. She had to be involved. Otherwise, the spirit beasts would be left behind. "Prepare, Cure," she said. "Huh?" The golden-haired girl blinked, then brightened with understanding. "Prepare for admission?" The silver-haired girl's body gathered light and changed. Her silver hair and purple eyes dulled to ordinary black. Her tall, striking features softened into a symmetrical, delicate face. Unremarkable, almost plain. Her cool temperament remained, but her appearance was suddenly that of an ordinary young woman. Inconspicuous, calm, unnoticeable. Her original plan had been more direct. Find the child of destiny, figure out why the plane had wagered on him, seize him, and squeeze every ounce of his value to buy the spirit beast's rise. But after detecting a clear god-level aura from a distance, she shelved that reckless idea. If she exposed herself now, the god realm would descend on her. She needed a disguise, a normal identity she could use to get close to the child without drawing attention. First things first, she had to enroll. The laboratory in the Hall of Worship, Ming City. Cool-toned spirit tool lamps cast an even glow. Instruments threw off a faint metallic chill, giving the room an atmosphere of exacting quiet. Kong Ming'an was hunched over a workbench, carefully carving a metal template with his engraving tool. Now and then he glanced at the black spirit ring hovering beside him, watching it rotate slowly. A thin blue current of light flickered in his eyes, which remained calm. Spirit power flowed from his fingertips into the tip of the tool. Following the pre-designed structure, he traced long, winding lines on the metal plate. After the final stroke, the array diagram flared briefly and then dimmed. Kong Ming'an injected a surge of spirit power and activated the plate. The pattern glowed, an intricate lattice of matrix lines connecting into a unique geometric form. Then the light faltered. An unstable hum snapped through the bench, and within seconds, the diagram faded. The core crystal at its center had developed a hairline crack. Failed again. Cake. The energy structure needs more optimization, Kong Ming'an murmured, not truly discouraged. It was just another experiment. Failures were part of the process. Each one pointed toward a correction. He tossed the metal plate into the recycling chute and started to record his log. Ever since his bounty was canceled and the occasional material drops stopped, his research had turned to the development of imprint spirit tools. Making spirit tools themselves was not the hard part. The array diagram was simply an inscription of an energy operation onto a carrier. The real difficulty lay in how to perfectly and stably imprint a spirit ability's unique energy structure onto a physical medium. Rings and metal were fundamentally different. The structure had to be modified, smoothed, and optimized. It was a painstaking process that required time and precise adjustments. He had been seizing a window of good form when something in his senses made him pause. He turned toward the center of the lab. Space rippled like water, and a gray door, radiating a solemn, almost dead aura, slid open. Two figures stepped through, one after the other. "You're the human who tricked the Snow Empress?" a crisp voice demanded. Kong Ming'an looked up. A pair of golden eyes filled his view, sharp with accusation. The sudden closeness made him step back. Before him stood a young girl with long emerald hair and those questioning golden eyes. She wore a white and green gown trimmed with delicate embroidery. Her face was doll-like and proud, and her small frame gave her an oddly cute appearance that belied the dangerous air around her. Kong Ming'an ignored the threat and scanned her energy signature. A faint blue current of light rippled in his eyes. Her energy pattern matched what he remembered. She was the Ice Empress. He didn't answer. Instead, he turned to the second figure. The white-robed woman beside the Ice Empress looked familiar. He hadn't seen her in a long time. "You returned later than I expected," Kong Ming'an said. Snow Empress moved with unruffled grace. "After passing the 700,000-year heavenly tribulation, I had matters to settle in the land of extreme north. It took a little time." Her voice was soft. Her ice-blue eyes were composed. Compared to when she had left, her cold, beautiful face now wore a faint, dewy radiance. The Ice Empress bristled. Didn't they see her? She stepped forward to plant herself between Kong Ming'an and Snow Empress, golden eyes glittering with distrust. "Human, you are not allowed to get so close to Snow Empress," Kong Ming'an muttered under his breath. "Who's getting close to whom?" He had expected the Ice Empress might arrive with Snow Empress, but hadn't planned how to handle it. He met Snow Empress's ice-blue gaze. No words were needed. They exchanged a compact understanding. The Ice Empress's throat bobbed. She felt ignored. "I'm right here," she thought furiously. "No one is listening to me." She stamped her foot, unable to keep the sourness out of her voice. "You two, don't ignore me." Snow Empress gave a small, steady sigh and explained, "Binger worried about me and insisted on coming to see for herself. I've already helped her pass the 400,000-year heavenly tribulation. Her condition is good, though." She paused and looked at the fuming Ice Empress at her side, then added mildly, "She's a little impatient." "Who's impatient? I'm not impatient," the Ice Empress protested, but she stopped, held in by Snow Empress's presence. Kong Ming'an nodded, understanding. He glanced at Ice Empress and said calmly, "In that case, Snow Empress, rest for a few days. I can make arrangements for Binger to get acquainted with the city and adapt to her new power. Then, shall we proceed as planned?" Snow Empress shook her head, a flash of resolve in her eyes. "No. Let's start now. I familiarized myself with it in the land of extreme north after passing the 700,000-year tribulation. My state is stable. Besides," she shot a look at Ice Empress, who was practically bristling and hissing at Kong Ming'an, ready to pounce. Her tone softened with a hint of helpless amusement. If we don't quickly make Binger believe you, I don't really want to send her back to the land of extreme north." Ice Empress's expression shifted from indignation to alarm. She had come to protect Snow Empress. Now she was being treated like someone who might be sent away if she didn't accept this stranger. "Is that so?" she muttered uneasily. Kong Ming'an let out a short, involuntary chuckle and inclined his head. "I understand." As he spoke, an aura of biting ice washed from him, identical to Snow Empress's. His body took on a faint ice-blue glow as he entered a perfect elementalization state. The Ice Empress froze, staring at that aura, at the way his energy matched Snow Empress's, and a new wariness crept over her. Kong Ming'an smiled, eyes rimmed with the same pale blue, and extended his hand toward Snow Empress. "Then let us begin. Forge the spirit core." Condensing a spirit core? The first to be unable to sit still was the Ice Empress. Worry rose hard and fast in her chest. This was the Snow Empress, after all. As the only one in the land of the extreme north who could casually cultivate and chat with the Snow Empress, the Ice Empress knew more about her history than most. The Snow Empress's origin had been damaged during her 600,000-year heavenly tribulation, and she'd suffered a second setback when her first attempt to condense a spirit core failed, wounding her origin again. Attempting a second spirit core was already a near-death gamble. Even though the 10,000-year mystic ice marrow had now replenished her origin to some degree, the risks were still huge. The Ice Empress stared at the Snow Empress, reached out and clasped her hand. "Snow Empress." "It's all right, Binger." The Snow Empress shook her head gently, softly withdrawing her hand. She looked instead at the young man before them. "I trust him." The Ice Empress felt a rush of helplessness. It almost seemed the Snow Empress was beyond her protection. After a long silence, she turned to Kong Ming'an with reluctant suspicion. "How confident are you?" Kong Ming'an looked a little helpless. "You don't trust me that much?" "It's precisely because it's you that I don't trust you," the Ice Empress snapped. "That makes sense." He nodded, thoughtful. He'd been with the Snow Empress long enough that he'd almost forgotten how wary spirit beasts were of humans. The Snow Empress herself had once looked at him with the same distrust. He composed his expression, met the Ice Empress's eyes, and grew serious. "Don't worry. I don't want anything to happen to the Snow Empress any more than you do." He wouldn't have proposed this plan otherwise. He'd have to be 100% confident. He wasn't planning to copy the old Spirit Core model exactly. First, you had to understand the traditional Spirit Core. In the Spirit Master system, it's the heart of a spirit's power, the foundation for becoming a titled Douluo. It accelerates spirit power recovery, boosts combat strength, and can break bottlenecks. Condensing one is a revolutionary step for any Spirit Master. But after obtaining Spirit Core samples, dissecting them, and studying their structure, Kong Ming'an had reached his own conclusion. The Spirit Core was an ingenious invention, but its functional properties were vague and its capabilities limited. The condensation steps, methods, and the energy architecture were all improvable. For an ordinary Spirit Master, trying to improve a Spirit Core is suicidal. One wrong move and spirit power can run wild, causing instant backlash and death. Only someone like Kong Ming'an, who could sense a problem and immediately revert spirit power to its original state and then try again, could afford such repeated experimentation. His spirit power simply wouldn't lose control. With a high tolerance for error and volunteers ranging from spirit saints and spirit doulos to even an evil titled Douluo willing to be test subjects, he'd finished improving the Spirit Core. Compared to the traditional approach, where besides the core's own attributes, extra attributes like spatial power are grafted on during fusion for stability, I built a single attribute, stable energy structure. I preserved the purity of its energy attribute and stripped away other, less useful traits. I focused on constructing 3 characteristics. First, absorption and transformation. The core can rapidly absorb all types of energy and convert them into the condenser's required energy. For example, if a spirit core is condensed with ultimate ice attribute, then whatever attribute of energy it absorbs, it will convert into 100% ultimate ice spirit power to perfectly match the condenser's needs and maximize energy utilization. Second, quality transformation. The condenser's spirit power is continuously purified through a cycle of devouring and release, enabling a qualitative upgrade of spirit power. In theory, given enough time, it can transform an ordinary spirit power attribute into an ultimate attribute. Third, self-adaptation and growth. As it's used, the spirit core adapts itself to the condenser and gradually strengthens. Combined with the second characteristic, take an ordinary ice attribute Spirit Master as an example. When the core can purify ordinary ice into ultimate ice for the user, the core itself will also advance, becoming an ultimate ice spirit core. Kong Ming'an waved his hand, and the simulated diagram of the spirit core's energy structure he'd been projecting dissolved. He smiled at the two of them. That's the spirit core I will build for the Snow Empress. Any other questions? The Snow Empress shook her head calmly. She'd seen enough of Kong Ming'an's methods to be used to his innovations. In many ways, after all the tests he'd run on her, he probably understood her energy structure better than she did. If he said it could be done, she believed him. The Ice Empress, though, was still puzzling over his words. Spirit core optimization, improved structure, focusing on specific characteristics. She frowned, trying to fit what he'd explained into what she already knew. As comprehension dawned, surprise lit her features. Then another question came to mind, and she asked cautiously, "Are you planning for the Snow Empress's second spirit core to also be ultimate ice?" "Yes," Kong Ming'an nodded. The Ice Empress's eyes brightened with anticipation. The big mystery among spirit masters was why they usually chose their own attribute for the first spirit core, but then picked spatial power for the second. Rarely did anyone try to condense two cores of the same attribute. The reason was simple and bloody. If two spirit cores with the same attribute existed simultaneously in one body, they would begin to attract and collide uncontrollably. And then, boom. That lesson had been written in blood. Most single-attribute spirit masters, after condensing the first core with their own attribute, had to research spatial power to safely condense a second core. If someone could propose a way to condense same attribute cores without catastrophe, it would be revolutionary. Perhaps Kong Ming'an had a method to resolve intra-body conflicts between like attribute cores? Kong Ming'an's answer was flat. No. The anticipation evaporated from the Ice Empress's face and was replaced by outrage. "Then why are you condensing one at all?" He spread his hands. "I never said the condensed spirit core has to be placed inside the body." Huh? The Ice Empress blinked, then her mind raced. That idea struck her as even more startling than the optimized core itself. After a moment, she steadied herself and demanded, "Then where do you put it?" "It's placed here." Kong Ming'an smiled and raised his hand slowly. A spirit ring hovered above his palm, faintly glowing. Indeed, just as the Ice Empress had warned, if two soul cores of the same attribute exist simultaneously within a body, they will inevitably converge, and the resulting collision of spirit power will cause an explosion. At first, Kong Ming'an had been troubled by this. A soul core is itself a highly concentrated aggregation of spirit power. The Snow Empress's failure to condense a second soul core had already damaged her origin. Two colliding soul cores inside one body would be catastrophic. That might not be a problem for him. His spirit power wouldn't go out of control. But for anyone else, it would be a disaster. How to solve it? He had had no direction until Elder Yi gave him a spark of inspiration. The Sacred Guidance Spirit Ring. Building on his theory of spirit ring malleability and drawing from the structure of the Sacred Guidance Spirit Furnace in the Divine Seal Throne world, he devised a new approach. Externally, it looked like a slowly rotating vortex of spirit power, a nebula, forming at the center of a spirit ring. Wasn't that vortex essentially the nascent form of a soul core before full condensation? That single insight opened everything for him. Normally, a spirit master condenses at most 3 soul cores of different attributes, placing them in the upper, middle, and lower dantian. Kong Ming'an murmured as he held a spirit ring between his fingers. A faint layer of spirit power covered his fingertips. With a flick, he reshaped the originally circular ring into other forms. But if you want multiple soul cores of the same attribute, focusing only on the body isn't enough. So I turned my attention to the spirit ring. He listed the ring's properties: singularity, independence, malleability, self-repair, energy storage, and integration with the body. If the spirit ring is molded to conform to a soul core and then used to carry it, the two can function as one, he said. The soul core can be independent of the body's circulation while still effectively integrated, preventing disruption to the body's energy. The spirit ring's storage can also match the optimized 3-attribute soul core I've developed. That means the limit on soul core condensation won't be the old 3. Each spirit ring can carry 1 soul core, 9 spirit rings, 9 soul cores. A small smile curved his mouth, and his voice held a spark of excitement. Each soul core represents a qualitative transformation of spirit power. The Snow Empress already had a peak foundation. 9 soul cores would mean 9 transformations. Could spirit power transformed 9 times approach the quality of divine force? Would mastering such power be a kind of ascension short of forging a god? Or, if Elder Yi eventually figured out spirit ring fusion and how to extend a ring's lifespan, could 9 identical soul cores be fused into a divine core, a new kind of godhood? Kong Ming'an paused, then, with a faint smile, asked the Ice Empress, "Any more questions?" By habit, he had been asked questions constantly by his junior brother and sister in his previous life. He enjoyed answering. Also, the Ice Empress's composed, slightly feigned calm was amusing. He almost wanted to buy her a bag of sunflower seeds. "No more questions," she said, stripped of the arrogance she had worn earlier. She couldn't quite judge the mere human before her anymore. She was quietly afraid that one more question would produce an answer that would turn her whole understanding upside down. Her brain felt like it was about to overload. "Then you will be responsible for protector duties," Kong Ming'an decided. "Oh," the Ice Empress replied sullenly. She glanced at the Snow Empress beside him, but stayed silent. Moving a little, she hopped onto a chair and hung her head, swinging her feet. Her golden eyes were full of dejection. She sensed she might really be unable to win the Snow Empress back. Seeing the Ice Empress retreat to a corner where she wouldn't disturb them, Kong Ming'an approached the Snow Empress. He placed a finger gently on her forehead and used his mental force to transmit the tailor-made form transformation art he had designed. The Snow Empress closed her eyes and received the instruction. When she opened them, her ice-blue gaze was bright and clear. "How is it?" "It's not difficult. We can begin immediately," Kong Ming'an said. The method had been customized for her, and the fact that she had already attempted a form transformation, albeit unsuccessfully, counted as experience. She needed little preparation. He breathed a brief sigh of relief, and a faint blue light glinted in his eyes, an extra precaution against any extremely low-probability accident. "Then let us begin." The Snow Empress nodded. Instantly, an aura of extreme ice descended. Standing in the center of the laboratory, her cold eyes shining with ice-blue light, she let loose a diffusion of piercing cold that formed a tiny, ultra-cold domain enveloping her perfectly. From that domain rose ice-blue streams of light that cocooned her figure like a chrysalis. The form transformation had begun. Time stretched. More than half a month passed before it seemed to anyone how quickly it had gone by. The Ice Empress sat in a chair, idly tinkering with several exquisite soul tool components, but part of her attention never left the ice-blue cocoon. She could sense the Snow Empress's aura dormant within. Moreover, the vast spirit energy of the 700,000-year spirit beast inside the cocoon hadn't diminished. In fact, without some restricting influence, it seemed to be consolidating during the transformation. "A form transformation method that preserves cultivation," she muttered, recalling what Kong Ming'an had explained earlier. Her gaze drifted to the young man sitting cross-legged before the cocoon. Ever since the Snow Empress began, he had been there, using that elemental body whose attributes and energy structure closely matched the Snow Empress's to guard her without fail. His mental sensing had never ceased. He monitored every change. It made the Ice Empress feel shut out, like an unnecessary outsider. "I was here first," she thought. "How did I become the outsider?" She bit her lip, furious but without a retort. Lying back on the lab table, she sighed and continued to fiddle with the components, her eyes distant. Then, crack. A faint but unmistakable cracking sound cut through the lab. The Ice Empress snapped her head up and stared at the ice-blue cocoon. Where the light had once flowed smoothly, several clean fractures had appeared, spreading rapidly across the surface at a speed she could see with the naked eye. Crack, crack. The sound of ice breaking grew more frequent. Hairline fissures spidered across the ice-blue cocoon until, at a single moment, it exploded. Countless threads of pale blue light scattered into the air and condensed into tiny glowing motes, like a swarm of otherworldly fireflies. In the center of the light, a figure emerged. She stood tall and lithe, a fitted white dress tracing every graceful curve. Snow-white hair fell to her waist, and her ice-blue eyes held a faint, cold luminescence. She lowered her head, studying her slender, delicate fingers with a puzzled expression. Then she clasped them together. A flash of comprehension passed through her eyes. She had succeeded. She really had changed from a spirit beast into a human. Kong Ming'an stepped forward without hesitation and took her wrist. He let spirit power flow through his fingertips, probing every current and pulse within her, meridians, dantian, sea of spirit, confirming that her new body was stable and intact. After a moment, he released her and exhaled, relief visible in his face. "No problem," he said. "The transformation was a success. No hidden dangers. How do you feel?" The Snow Empress flexed her new body and tested this alien physique. Her voice was cold and crystalline, tinged with wonder. "Very good. It feels strange, in a good way." She paused, sensing. Then, one after another, 9 spirit rings appeared beneath her in sequence. 2 black, then 7 red. The laboratory filled instantly with a suffocating, overwhelming aura. That pressure alone marked the ceiling of human ability, a rank 99 limit Douluo. The Ice Empress, watching, concentrated on the Snow Empress's signature. It was definitely her, the dominator of the extreme north, but no longer a beast. Her life form had become human. A flicker of thought crossed the Ice Empress's face. Perhaps because the Snow Empress had originally been an anthropomorphic spirit beast, a snow maiden, her appearance had changed little. The Snow Empress closed her eyes to feel the sensation and then opened them, the expression in her ice-blue pupils suddenly complex. "I can feel some inherent shackles are gone," she said slowly. "And the heavenly tribulation I could sense before is completely gone. It's as if the tribulation no longer regards me as a target." "The heavenly tribulation? Gone?" The Ice Empress's voice rose. "It really disappeared? Are you sure?" The Snow Empress nodded, checking again, then answered with certainty. "Yes, I'm sure. It's gone." The Ice Empress looked at Kong Ming'an as if seeing him in a new light, astonished, incredulous, a little resentful. Kong Ming'an considered for a moment, then suggested, "Switch back to your spirit beast form. Let's see." At his request, the Snow Empress obeyed. The 7th spirit ring, the red ring that served as the anchor point for her martial soul true body, glowed. Pale blue light shimmered over her. In a second or two, the transformation completed. The Ice Empress felt it most clearly. That familiar spirit beast aura had returned. Although the Snow Empress's outward appearance barely shifted, she had indeed reverted to her original form. "How does it feel?" Kong Ming'an asked. The Snow Empress frowned. The old sensation, the shackles, the looming threat of the heavenly tribulation, returned with the form change, and it made her visibly uncomfortable. "The shackles are back," she said, "and I can sense the heavenly tribulation again." Once free of a burden, it is hard to go back to carrying it. Having tasted the relief of being unbound and freed from the tribulation, reverting to her spirit beast form brought back a pressure she did not want. Kong Ming'an remembered a widely told law of the god realm: spirit beasts cannot become gods, and understood that the shackles and the heaven tribulation were likely tied to it. He murmured, "Change back to human." She changed again. The weight eased from her shoulders, and a troubled, almost reluctant expression passed over her features. After becoming human, she found she did not want to be a beast again. The feeling was foreign and confusing. She fell silent while she sorted it out. Kong Ming'an set about recording the data from her transformation. He took her wrist once more, and with careful spirit probing, traced the subtleties of her meridians and spirit veins. The Ice Empress remained nearby, watching them hold hands, a dull ache forming in her chest. She wanted to speak but found no words. All she could do was stare, feeling a growing helplessness as she watched events unfold. When Kong Ming'an finished the inspection and confirmed that using the martial soul true body as the anchor point for switching forms was safe, he finally allowed himself to relax. The transformation was complete. Now the plan moved to the next phase, altering the spirit rings, condensing a spirit core, and achieving a perfect fusion of the two beings. Kong Ming'an looked at the Snow Empress. Their eyes met, and without words, they reached understanding. "Leave it to me," he said softly. "Don't resist." She nodded. Then, under the Ice Empress's stunned gaze, Kong Ming'an stepped forward and gently drew her into his arms. The Snow Empress tensed for a moment. Cold ripples flashed across her eyes. Then she relaxed into his embrace and remained still. Before the Ice Empress could collect herself, a brilliant ice-blue light suddenly exploded from the pair and enveloped them. The Ice Empress felt their auras knit together, meld and merge, an unmistakable fusion. She stared intently as the light waned. When it cleared, a tall, slender young man stepped forward. He wore a moon-white robe tailored to perfection, embroidered with exquisite ice motifs at the collar and cuffs. Snow-white hair fell naturally across his chest in a few loose strands, framing fair skin and an extraordinarily handsome face. Up close, he resembled Kong Ming'an by about 70%, a mature version of him, but his brows and eyes carried the Snow Empress's cold, ethereal grace. His ice-blue gaze was like an ancient frozen pond, clean, precise, and utterly chilling. The Ice Empress's heart lurched. She took in that blended face, too beautiful to be real, and felt something inside her betray her. Her throat bobbed involuntarily. Damn it, she realized. This person now resembled the Snow Empress only in part. Yet why could she not find herself resisting him? The Ice Empress forced herself to look away. She bowed her head and rubbed her face. Her thoughts scattered. In the distance, Kong Ming'an, now in an entirely new form, didn't notice her hesitation. He was busy getting used to the new state. This state was the spirit fusion with the Snow Empress, with Kong Ming'an dominant. He still had control over energy, but only for a short time. The instinctive manipulation was brutally draining. It was enough, however, to finish condensing a spirit core and altering a spirit ring. He tested the fused body briefly, feeling the power that far exceeded his original form, and then moved to work. He lifted his hand. The Snow Empress's original 9th-ranked, scarlet, 100,000-year spirit ring floated into his palm. From his fingertips poured countless translucent threads of energy, finer than hair, yet intensely condensed. They wound around the ring. The structure of the ring unfolded before his mind like a blueprint. Those thread-like filaments moved like carving knives and embroidery needles, etching and weaving across the ring. As the patterns were traced by his touch, the ring's hidden designs shifted and blossomed into an indescribable beauty. At the same time, Kong Ming'an raised his other hand, palm up, and gathered the ultimate ice and snow spirit power unique to the Snow Empress. Short on time, he had to multitask, modifying the spirit ring while condensing a spirit core. His method, however, differed completely from tradition. He did not begin by compressing spirit power. Instead, with precise mental force, he constructed an optimized structural framework for the spirit core's energy and then guided spirit power into it, setting it to rotate. As power fed in, the pre-built energy lattice hardened, and the spirit power inside began to condense. Under Kong Ming'an's control, the process was clinical. No life-or-death spasms that would plague ordinary spirit masters. Efficiency and precision replaced panic. Minute by minute, the work progressed. The Ice Empress watched with bated breath, taking in every detail as the spirit core condensed and the ring was reshaped. The scarlet 9th ring transformed before her eyes into a deep, pure ice blue. Silver patterns flowed across its body like rivers of light, exuding an overpowering chill and a vast, mysterious energy. Beside it, a spirit core no larger than a thumb, a miniature star of ice-blue light, had formed. It hovered, drawing in the surrounding heaven and earth origin chi and transmuting it into the purest ultimate ice and snow energy. When Kong Ming'an's eyes narrowed, he brought both hands together. The ice-blue spirit core flew precisely to the modified ring and settled at its center. The instant ring and core met, the countless transparent threads, ones only Kong Ming'an could see and that he had pre-designed, shot out from the ring and fused perfectly with the core. Everything clicked into place, as if they had been made to be one. The combination was complete. The ring now pulsed with a stronger, more stable aura. Kong Ming'an exhaled, his mental force slackening. In a flash of light, the spirit fusion state ended. The two figures separated. Kong Ming'an's face had gone pale, his body swayed, and an overwhelming weariness washed over him. His vision dimmed, and he fell backward, unconscious. The Snow Empress reached for him instantly, catching him gently and letting him rest against her. A flicker of worry crossed her ice-blue eyes as she checked him over. When she realized he had simply been drained by the expenditure of spirit power and mental force, she relaxed a little. "Snow Empress?" The Ice Empress hurried forward, voice edged with concern. "He's fine." The Snow Empress shook her head and adjusted how she held him, careful and gentle. She looked down at the spirit ring, now imbued with the spirit core, and was quiet for a moment. Then she lifted her head to the Ice Empress and asked softly, "Binger, do you trust him now?" The Ice Empress fell silent, her gaze complex as it rested on Kong Ming'an's pale features. A vision of his adult face, calm, composed, floated through her mind. She pressed her lips together and whispered, I don't know." Trusting a human was not easy for her. The Snow Empress's fingertips brushed Kong Ming'an's cheek. Her voice was ethereal and steady. "Binger, do you remember the contract between him and me?" The Ice Empress nodded. "Your origin has been replenished, and his nature won't let him break his word," the Snow Empress said. "The one who is fated to become a god will keep his promise to protect the land of the extreme north." She paused, then smiled faintly and genuinely. "In essence, everything about me is already his." The Ice Empress said nothing. The Snow Empress looked at her with a small hope in those ice-blue eyes. "So, Binger, are you willing to try to trust him?" The Ice Empress stayed silent a long moment before answering in a dry voice. "I still don't know. He is human. It's difficult for me to trust him completely. But—" She pictured Kong Ming'an's steady confidence when he spoke, the relentless focus with which he had watched over the Snow Empress's transformation for more than half a month. She hesitated and then continued, "I want to stay. I want to see more." She wanted to see with her own eyes whether this human was truly different, whether the Snow Empress's choice was justified. A faint smile softened the Snow Empress's cold face. "Welcome, Binger." The Ice Empress pursed her lips and glanced at the unconscious young man, a little awkward. "Welcome what? I don't even know if he'll allow me to stay. If he refuses, are you going to hide me?" The Snow Empress's expression shifted in a way the Ice Empress couldn't read, but her voice was certain. "He will agree to let you stay." She looked down at the young man in her arms, as if recalling something, and repeated with a strange undertone, "He definitely will." "You're that sure?" the Ice Empress asked, suspicious and bewildered. Something about the Snow Empress's certainty felt off, though she couldn't say why. Consciousness came back to him through a fog. At some point, his awareness had drifted upward. Kong Ming'an slowly woke. The first thing he noticed was an unusually soft, springy cushion under the back of his head. A faint, delicate scent, like melting ice, brushed the tip of his nose. Opening his eyes with effort, his vision was blurry at first, then cleared enough to reveal the metallic ceiling of the lab, only half of it. He paused. Half a ceiling? Before he could puzzle it out, a cool voice floated down from above. "Awake?" He gathered himself, rubbed his temples, and pushed himself up. His gaze slid to the side and naturally met the Snow Empress's ice-blue eyes, uncomfortably close and threaded with concern. "I'm fine," he said, "just overdone. Half a month of nursing, guiding the spirit fusion technique, temporarily borrowing the Snow Empress's power, and maintaining intense mental discipline and precise energy control for so long had stacked debuffs until his mind chose to protect him with sleep." "How long did I pass out?" he asked. "Only 2 days," she answered softly. He understood, but before he could reply, another voice chimed in. "The Snow Empress has been watching over you the whole time." The Ice Empress stood not far off, arms crossed in her elegant green and white gown. Her golden eyes studied him, and the scorpion tail flicked with restless discontent, radiating a sour sort of resentment. Kong Ming'an smiled faintly and turned back to the Snow Empress. "How do you feel?" He wasn't asking about mood. He meant the state of her power now that her spirit ring had condensed into a spirit core. "Very good," she said, pausing then. "Exceptionally good." With a subtle breath of will, her spirit rings manifested one after another beneath her feet. 2 black, 6 red, and the last, an arresting pure ice-blue ring. It no longer looked like an ordinary ring, but like a miniature stellar nebula. A dreamlike blue light flowed over it, and inside countless tiny star-like ice crystals slowly orbited a central ice blue spirit core. It radiated vast, pristine cold, magnificent and mysterious, almost intoxicating. Kong Ming'an watched closely, eyes distant. He reached out and let a fingertip brush the exquisite creation he'd helped shape. Warmth and surging energy met his skin. The structure felt stable and intricate. The spirit core and ring were woven into a single, coherent whole, near perfect. He smiled to himself. I was going to call it the core-embracing ring, but star ring fits better. A small, proud light flashed in his eyes. Creating something like this himself filled him with a rare, satisfying accomplishment. The Snow Empress lowered her gaze, watching him. Even the Ice Empress glanced twice, surprised to find that the human who had captured the Snow Empress sometimes looked rather handsome. Kong Ming'an noticed the look, felt a little pleased, and brought his attention back. How do you feel specifically? He asked the Snow Empress. Spirit power. What's changed? She composed herself, sensing her inner state. Right now, all my spirit power is being slowly drawn into the star ring. It's purified within the spirit core and then fed back into my body. And the quality of the spirit power returned has improved by 1 full level. Kong Ming'an nodded. That matched his expectations. The star ring's effect wasn't an instant miraculous leap. Its transformation came gradually, ring by ring. Each completed star ring represented a comprehensive refinement of the body's spirit power, like climbing a divine staircase. With every step, there would be a transformation. When all 9 rings were formed, the spirit power would undergo an ultimate qualitative leap, a complete sublimation. It was a different road to divinity than the traditional faith-forged god position, a path to godhood through spirit power, and exactly what the spell cultivator system pursued. How had he reached the right thoughts so quickly? Maybe he'd slept. His mind was unusually sharp. He made his calculation aloud. At the current rate of absorption and transformation, finishing this first round of star ring conversion will take about half a year. The Snow Empress nodded. The estimate matched her own perception. Compared to the millennia she had stalled her cultivation to avoid a premature heavenly tribulation, half a year was nothing. She could feel progress every moment now. Kong Ming'an, however, shook his head. It can be shortened. A flicker of curiosity crossed her ice-blue eyes. How? Absorb a 10,000-year mystic ice marrow, he said. Part of its energy will accelerate the transformation, pushing the spirit core inside the star ring to its current limit as fast as possible. The rest will be stored to prepare for condensing the second spirit core. Transformation didn't occur out of thin air. It demanded vast energy. The remaining 10,000-year mystic ice marrow was the best possible source. The Snow Empress considered, then produced a crystalline marrow the size of a palm, liquid swirling within. She held it close to the ice-blue star ring. At her will, the ring seemed to awaken, issuing a faint suction and beginning to devour the marrow's pure extreme cold. Energy poured in at a furious rate. The ring's surface glowed ice-blue and grew steadily brighter. She gave Kong Ming'an a meaningful look, settled cross-legged, and slipped into deep cultivation. The Ice Empress watched from the side, no bitterness, only pure envy. For a being at the peak of spirit beasts, seeing a clear path to higher realms stirred longing. She pursed her lips. A hint of anticipation shone in her golden eyes. Kong Ming'an glanced at her and chuckled. What? You want to learn? The Ice Empress stiffened, immediately crossing her arms and turning away with a huff. Who would want to learn that? He let the slight moment pass. His gaze lingered on the restless scorpion tail swaying behind her. Amusement flickered through him. With a slow smile, he added, It's not impossible for you to cultivate the star ring method, but it will take time. First, you must understand that the star ring method I devised isn't universally applicable yet. It was tailored specifically to the Ice Empress's physiology and spirit structure. To make it widely usable would take a long time of modification and adaptation, and the cultivation requirements are severe. A 90-level Spirit Master can usually condense a traditional soul core, but my improved version, because it has growth potential, needs little spirit power to form at the start. What it demands, however, is far greater finesse in spirit power control. At minimum, You need to be at Super Douluo level. Besides, the spirit ring that carries the soul core has to be at least a 100,000-year ring. A 10,000-year ring simply can't bear the load. By the selfless sacrifice of a titled Douluo-ranked evil soul master, and using Elder Yi's unfinished spirit ring fusion technique, they had managed to forge a somewhat unstable 100,000-year ring that could bear the new kind of soul core. Of course, once Kong Ming'an withdrew the sustaining force, the half-finished star ring grew unbalanced and self-annihilated. Kong Ming'an chuckled lightly. Those restrictions aren't a real problem for Her Excellency the Ice Empress, one of the 3 rulers of the land of Extreme North. The biggest flaw in the star ring method right now is energy. His tone grew more serious. All the 10,000-year profound ice marrow on the Ice Empress's body, plus what I still have, is probably only enough for Her Excellency to condense 4 or 5 star rings and bring them to their limit. To keep condensing star rings beyond that will require enormous stores of spirit power. After all, the star ring method's ultimate aim is the sublimation of spirit power, ascension to godhood, and the energy required for that is astronomical. So, do you have access to any vast energy sources? She asked. No. The Ice Empress's voice tightened, but she quickly added, It's fine. I can solve it. Her eyes brightened, and her heart betrayed her with a quickened beat. She fell silent for a moment, then, unable to resist the temptation of divine power, finally asked, You can help me? Yes, I can. Kong Ming'an narrowed his eyes slightly and smiled. Under her watchful gaze, he calmly produced a blank contract from his storage spirit tool and began writing clauses one by one. When he was done, he slid the freshly written contract across to the Ice Empress. So, he said with an inviting smile, voice syrupy with temptation, Do you want to sign? The Ice Empress stared at his practiced movements and the confident ease of his smile, startled. Instinct made her take a step back. Caution bloomed across her delicate face. How could he be so practiced at this? Was there some trick? And yet, the chance to become a god. She pressed her lips together and hesitated, torn between doubt and desire. Outside Shrek City, the night lay deep and the moon hid behind thin clouds. A small convoy moved along the quiet road toward the city, still a dozen lie away. The spirit beasts pulling the lead carriages suddenly whinnied, anxious. The lead spirit master pulled the reins and halted, and the rest of the convoy came to a stop as well. Directly ahead of them, sitting quietly in a wooden wheelchair, was a hunched figure who seemed to have been waiting a long time. Moonlight fell across the face, revealing age and kindness. The dragon god Douluo, Ming'an. Ming'an lifted his cloudy eyes to the largest carriage in the convoy. His voice was calm and steady, but carried an undeniable authority. Dubusi, leave Shrek City. A cold snort answered, and the carriage curtain was thrown aside. Dubusi stepped down. He was burly, his dark green hair bristling, and the aura around him condensed and vast, with no leakage. Ming'an's expression flickered. He sensed the terrifying, vast chi and blood energy roaring within Dubusi. Dubusi stopped a short distance from Ming'an, sneering. Leave Shrek City? On what grounds, Ming'an? Based on your half-dead, crippled state? Ming'an's gaze remained steady. Leave Shrek City. Dubusi laughed and goaded him. Is that the best you can do? You should have heard it from Xuanzi before I drove him off. He gave me better words than that. Ming'an said nothing further. Then, from his hunched frame, an indescribably terrifying aura suddenly erupted. Brilliant golden light shot skyward, painting half the night in daylight. A vast, pure pressure, bright, immense, imbued with dragon might, crashed down toward Dubusi like a tidal wave. The air seemed to harden, and the earth beneath them trembled under the force, the power of the peak of this world. Even so, Dubusi stood like a mountain. The dark green luminescence of his chi and blood flared, and he laughed wildly as that chi and blood power surged up into the clouds. His body spirit unfurled, revealing brute physical might amplified by potent poison spirit power. The 3 forces, chi and blood, body spirit, and poison spirit power, overlapped and fused, making his flesh glow faintly as he braced against Ming'an's dragon might, purely by physical strength. One man was a limit Douluo, and the other was only a step short of that realm. 2 terrifying auras clashed in the air with a soundless roar. Ming'an held a slight edge because of his higher realm. His light-attributed spirit power compressed the space around Dubusi, forcing him to falter. Muen's eyes shone, and he spoke slowly. Dubusi, take the people of the body sect and leave. I do not wish to cause more slaughter. The sneer on Dubusi's face deepened. Muen, do you still think you're the dragon god Douluo of old? Suddenly, 9 perfectly matched spirit rings rose around Dubusi. They lit in sequence, but instead of activating a skill, they simply enveloped him, a ring release. The ring's constraints on energy were lifted, and the vast spirit power inside them poured into his body like a breaking dam. His aura climbed, chi and blood burning like a forge, radiating oppressive heat. Muen, Dubusi roared. His body swelled, his skin took on a metallic sheen. He drove forward and threw a punch, raw force condensing in his fist. Muen's face grew solemn. He raised his withered hand, and as if moving in slow, inevitable time, struck back, King's descent upon the world. The impact detonated. The shockwave smashed outward. Muen's wooden wheelchair tore loose and flew away, but his aged body remained standing, hunched but unmoved. A faint frown crossed his brow. The force of the blow had carried something unfamiliar, a pure, domineering power that was not like ordinary spirit power. This is the power of chi and blood? Chi and blood, Muen's thought flickered, and he stopped holding back. Golden light flared in his eyes as he threw a punch that felt as if it carried the will of the world. Poison Immortal did not dodge. He crossed his arms and met the blow head-on. The collision exploded. Poison Immortal was blasted back like a cannonball, spitting blood. Deep fissures cracked across his chest as if his body might split in two. Yet in midair, he only shifted his posture and landed as lightly as a swan on water. He shook himself, and the terrible wounds on his chest knit visibly before their eyes. The chi and blood around him burned with the vigor of a roaring fire. Ha! Is that all the dragon god Douluo has? Poison Immortal sneered, wiping blood from his mouth. Muen's face was set, unreadable. He sat in his wheelchair, still, and kept throwing punches, after-image fists of reign over the world overlaid with the purifying brilliance of Sea God's light, raining down on Poison Immortal. Bang! 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 Poison Immortal was forced to retreat step by step. Blood blooms opened across his body, and the sharp cracks of breaking bone rang out. Yet with each injury, his immortal-like body surged with chi and blood that forcibly sealed the damage. He laughed wildly as he staggered back. Muen, if you were whole and at your peak, I'd leave. But with your crippled body, how long can you keep up full-power attacks? How many times can you still use Sea God's light? Muen drove another fist into him, voice cold. Killing you a few times is enough. Clambering out of the pit, Poison Immortal was drenched in blood, but his aura only swelled. He sneered, voice booming like a bell, drilling at Muen's ears. Kill me a few times, then come. Your Sea God's light only sends me to the brink. Enough for me to escape, enough to recover and come back. How many times can you use it? How much longer can an old man like you last? How many moves do you think that trash Xuanzi could use to stop me? And if I wanted to, how long would it take me to slaughter your entire Shrek lineage? Every word aimed to wound. Muen's attack faltered. He sat in his specialized chair, his aged face shifting in the moonlight. For a long time, he said nothing. Finally, exhaustion shading his voice, he asked slowly, "What is your true purpose in coming to Shrek City?" Poison Immortal laughed. "Your Shrek lot tried to take what belonged to our business partner. I'm just here backing our partner and setting things right. The body sect is in Shrek City to do honest business." Muen's gaze was steady, probing. After a long silence, his form blurred, and like a phantom, he melted into the night. Only his voice lingered, low and measured. "Poison Immortal, I know where your body sect is. I'm a man who has little time left. If Shrek suffers because of you, I won't mind making a little more slaughter before I die." Poison Immortal stood silent, then waited an hour to be certain Muen had truly left. His expression twisted in frustration. "Dying is impossible. Damn this pain," he grumbled, but beneath it his face gleamed with excitement. The amplification from mastering chi and blood was greater than he had imagined. It didn't just let him match Muen one-on-one, it pushed him toward the outline of an ultimate breakthrough. If he reached it, he could live decades more, enough time for the youngster in the sect to mature. The body sect would prosper. He vanished in a flash and hurried back to the convoy, lifting a massive hand. "Body sect, enter the city with me." Inside the golden ancient tree of Shrek City, Ming'an reappeared. Not a hint of his presence leaked out. He seemed the same as before, though any super Douluo could sense his aura was dimmer than when he had left. Concern filled the faces that gathered around him. Elder Mu, they called. Xuanzi was first to step forward. His face still bore lingering bruises, and his aura was weakened, remnants of a clash a few days prior when a conflict between body sect disciples and Shrek students had erupted outside the city. Xuanzi had moved to suppress them, only to be gravely wounded by Poison Immortal. That was why Ming'an had intervened directly. Ming'an eased back into his reclining chair and scanned the group with cloudy eyes, voice heavy with fatigue. Poison Immortal is more troublesome than we expected. He seems to have completely mastered the power of Qi and blood. I can defeat him, but I cannot kill him outright. A prolonged stalemate will be harmful to Shrek. Silence fell. If even Elder Mu could not finish Poison Immortal, the body sect would be a thorn embedded in Shrek City. Muen's gaze passed over the crowd and paused on Xuanzi, a fleeting disappointment hidden in the look. The gluttonous divine ox spirit was an exceptional spirit, giving a faint chance, though no guarantee, of reaching the ultimate. But Ming'an didn't see that possibility in Xuanzi. Still, he forced encouragement into his voice. Xuanzi, focus on your cultivation. Break through to the 99th level as soon as possible so you can truly support the academy. Xuanzi bowed his head in shame and affirmation. Ming'an's eyes then lingered on a figure standing farther back, Zhang Lexuan. In her, he saw a slim, real possibility. After the grand competition, she had broken through to level 70 and skipped a grade to absorb a 70,000-year spirit ring. Though hurt, she had recovered quickly, and her cultivation had not stalled. Over the past year, her level had climbed to 74. She could possibly be a titled Douluo before 30. If she absorbed 1 or 2 more 100,000-year spirit rings, reaching 98 would be within reach. With her temperament, she might also help keep Shrek clean. Ming'an bowed his head in thought. This perhaps was Shrek's last chance. After a long sigh, he issued an order. Relay this to everyone. Teachers and students of the academy are to keep a low profile. Avoid confrontation with the body sect and related forces for the time being. They answered in unison, but their faces showed what words did not: unwillingness. Shrek Academy had led the Douluo continent for 10,000 years. Nobody expected it to be forced into such a posture now. The room fell into a heavy, almost funeral silence. At Ming'an's command, they dispersed. The chamber returned to stillness, leaving Ming'an alone at the window, his figure a little more desolate than before as he watched the city beneath him. Time slowed in Kong Ming'an's laboratory in Capital City. At the workbench, the Ice Empress was carefully inscribing a blank spirit ring with the spirit abilities she had mastered. She still wore her signature green and white dress, small frame perched on a tall lab chair. Her legs, sheathed in black stockings, hung neatly instead of swinging idly. Her golden eyes were fixed on the ring as extreme ice spirit power traced itself inside. Finally, the ring gave a faint ice blue glow. She let out a quiet sigh of relief. She calmed her mind and checked the contract tying her to that annoying fellow, Kong Ming'an. The progress bar labeled value had crept up a bit. A small, involuntary smile touched her lips. In the end, the Ice Empress had surrendered to Kong Ming'an's star ring path to godhood and signed the contract. To be safe, she'd shown it to the Snow Empress first to make sure there were no traps. Unsurprisingly, the contract was straightforward. The Ice Empress would supply soul skill modules and cooperate with research in exchange for value, which she could convert later into the energy needed to form a star ring. After signing and trying to condense a spirit power module, she'd found she liked the sensation of seeing her effort quantified. It had become a little addictive. Beside her, Kong Ming'an sat sorting spirit rings, one by one, examining the soul skill modules inside. Ice Emperor's body protection, he read aloud to himself, covers the body with ice crystal armor, grants very strong defense. Basically a tougher carapace. Relies on extreme ice's inherent energy. Energy efficiency is middling. He moved to the next ring. Ice Empress's pincers. Both hands transform into scorpion pincers, high attack and penetration. He snorted mentally. Scorpion pincers for physical attack? Not as refined as the Snow Empress's Emperor's palm. The next ring, Eternal Frost Domain, a domain skill that plummets temperatures across a wide area and freezes everything. He frowned. A domain is acceptable, but the rule application is crude, not as skillful as the Snow Empress's Emperor's Chill Heaven. Kong Ming'an had been excited. After the Snow Empress's high-quality modules, he'd expected the Ice Empress to be just as impressive. But looking at the small pile of spirit rings she'd handed him, he reached a reluctant conclusion. She had learned a lot of abilities, but most lacked technical refinement, depending heavily on instinct and racial talent, rather than crafted technique. He looked up at the busy Ice Empress with a hint of pity. She must have felt his gaze. She raised her head, golden eyes narrowing in confusion. She scrunched her delicate nose and huffed. "What are you looking at? Why that strange expression?" Kong Ming'an shook his head. "Nothing." He was about to say he wanted to buy her some melon seeds, but thought better of it. The Ice Empress continued to regard him suspiciously. Kong Ming'an let his eyes linger on her simple enthusiasm. He could almost see his junior brothers and sisters from a past life, fresh faces in a lab, brimming with the confidence that they could change the world. How naive, he thought. He hoped she'd keep that simplicity. He had planned to coax her into becoming a bodyguard and pair her with the Snow Empress as the Extreme North duo. If both formed star rings and used a spirit fusion skill together, they might be able to suppress even DTN. Then he could recycle high-end materials from targets like the Evil Empress, Yeshishui, Long Xiaoyao, and those affiliated with the Holy Spirit cult. But looking at her spirit modules now, he wasn't so sure she'd be the linchpin he'd hoped for. She might not be a top-tier fighter after all. Lost in thought, he stood, opened a portal to the undead demiplane, stepped through, and returned a moment later, carrying a clear, biting cold bone, the left arm bone of an ice jade scorpion. The Ice Empress's eyes snapped to it. Her expression hardened. "Human," she said frostily, "why do you hold my kin's spirit bone? You really are wicked. You." Before she could finish, Kong Ming'an casually tossed the bone to her. She froze a beat, then caught it, clutching it to her chest. She peered at the bone and then at him, suspicion and puzzlement warring in her gaze. "The skill on that spirit bone is Ice Explosion Technique," Kong Ming'an said evenly. "It was legally bought by a subordinate of mine at the Ming'an Chamber of Commerce auction. I didn't kill anything." Her anger cooled somewhat, though she still watched him warily. "So, is this skill useful?" Kong Ming'an asked. She turned the bone in her hands, feeling the energy fluctuations inside, familiar in origin, like her own. "It's troublesome," she admitted slowly. "I'm not human. I can't directly absorb spirit bones. If I study it carefully over time, I might be able to understand it." "How long?" he pressed. She hesitated. "Not long. A few 100 years should be enough." Kong Ming'an was silent. Then, after a moment, he asked abruptly, "Are you afraid of pain?" The question startled her. "What do you want to do?" she asked cautiously. He smiled faintly and drew out the life-engraving knife, the blade that constantly nourished his body and enhanced his strength. "I can let you learn the ice explosion technique quickly. The process might be painful." He explained his plan. Not literal spirit bone grafting, but a temporary spirit bone shaping procedure. Using the life-engraving knife, he would inscribe a soul skill module directly onto her bones in a way that would naturally degrade and be absorbed by her body, letting her perceive and comprehend the technique at speed. It was a method he had used in the past to master soul skill modules, though after acquiring imprint, it had become useless. Still, for the Ice Empress, it would work. She looked at the knife, sensing the rich life aura it gave off. Something about it set her on edge, but the thought of mastering ice explosion quickly pushed aside her hesitation. Besides, she had already signed the contract. What was there to fear? "Do it," she said, puffing her chest out with a confidence that barely disguised her nerves. Kong Ming'an reminded her seriously, "It'll be painful. If you're afraid—" "Enough," she snapped. "Just do it." He raised an eyebrow and chuckled. "All right, don't beg for mercy later." She snorted. "Me beg for mercy? Ridiculous." Kong Ming'an held out his palm. The Ice Empress glanced at it, then placed her right hand in his. A small pain for a great gain, she thought. How bad could it be? Hiss! Ugh! A muffled groan, barely suppressed, echoed through the laboratory. The Snow Empress bit her lip, forcing herself not to cry out. Her golden eyes dropped to her hand as a gentle but irresistible force took control of it. The flesh split open from within, then was held apart by shimmering threads of energy, revealing the pale, jade-like bones beneath. Ming'an, expression unreadable, used the tip of his life-carving knife to etch intricate, ancient runes into those bones. Physically, the procedure did nothing damaging. She could have healed from such a cut in an instant, but the pain was pure and mental. Snow Empress could feel her mental force being drawn out and bound to the bones. Each time the knife scored the bone, her recovering will was carved again, until a mark was left on both bone and mind. Each incision felt like 1,000 tiny needles stabbing through her consciousness. There was no lasting injury, only a steady, intolerable ache. If she hadn't felt Ming'an's promised soul skill module take root, she would have sworn he was torturing her for spite. Her delicate face tightened. She said nothing, but her expression read, "I can take it. Do your worst." Ming'an glanced up and said slowly, "If you can't bear it, you can cry out." "It doesn't hurt," she snapped through clenched teeth. She refused to make a sound. Ming'an chuckled and continued his precise work. After a few more strokes, he raised his hand and a warm golden-green glow washed over her palm. The split flesh sealed at once. Her hand was whole, pale and untouched, as if the whole ordeal had been an illusion. Snow Empress exhaled long and slow, recovering quickly. Only a faint tingling remained in her mental force, a ghost of the pain that had passed. She could feel the soul skill module implanted in her hand as clearly as a heartbeat. Excitement lit her eyes. From a nearby materials area, she produced a soft bones rabbit and, with a barely contained thrill, began testing the ice explosion technique that had just been engraved into her instincts. Ming'an watched in silence as she practiced, his face unreadable. In the original story, Snow Empress had claimed that possessing the ice explosion technique while in the extreme Northland would give her a chance to challenge the Snow Empress. An odd paradox. Ming'an didn't know how true that was, but he wanted her potential confirmed. Another top-tier fighter at his side would be useful. He ran a quick mental tally of the high-end combatants now under his influence. Elder Yi's strength was hard to pin down, but from the rate of his recovery, he seemed roughly at demigod to quasi-god level. His grandfather, Kong Deming, was a level 98 body cultivator with twin spirits. With the innate soul tool nearing completion, he'd be close to demigod power. The Snow Empress herself was level 99, an extreme ice type. With the star ring she was cultivating, Ming'an expected her to reach quasi-god status when she reached the second or third ring. Including other recent recruits, he had roughly 4 top-tier fighters, enough, in theory, to dominate the Douluo continent. Even so, Ming'an had no intention of declaring war. He was the child of destiny. The god of destruction had told him that he now held 80% of the luck accumulated on the Douluo plane over tens of thousands of years. He owed a debt of gratitude to the plane will that had gone all in for him. More importantly, his plans extended beyond simply ascending to the god realm. He wanted to remake the Douluo plane itself. That, he thought, would be an achievement no ascent alone could match. To do it, he preferred to unify the continent by peaceful means where possible. Mass slaughter would burden the plane, while the way losing a body's crucial microbes burdened a body. If demonstration was needed, he would deliver a crushing, unmistakable example of strength to cow opposition, using evil soul masters and feral spirit beasts as raw materials where appropriate. Snow Empress blew up 46 soft bones rabbits in a row and finally allowed herself to smile in satisfaction. When she returned from the experiment, her golden eyes shone with restrained excitement. She hesitated, then awkwardly approached Ming'an, who leaned against the workbench, apparently lost in thought. Thanks, she said, voice a little stiff. You're welcome. Ming'an snapped back to the present, waved a hand casually, and a line of numbers on her progress bar dropped sharply. Nearly half of the value she'd accumulated was suddenly deducted. Soul skill module plus surgery and treatment fees. No credit, he intoned. Snow Empress stared at the shrinking bar in disbelief, then exploded. This is robbery. I was saving that to trade for divine force. You evil, swindling human. If you don't want to pay, Ming'an cut in calmly, then give me back the ice explosion technique. He reached for her right hand. Instinctively, she made a hissing little sound, as protective as a kitten over its food, and clamped her hand to her chest, stepping back with golden eyes flashing. "Dream on. It's mine," she snapped, glaring. Ming'an pulled his hand back and nodded. "Then we have an agreement." She could feel the module in her mind, clear as a bell, and the sting of the deducted points twisted her heart. Still, there was no way she would surrender the newly gained ability. She narrowed her eyes at him, and, unable to do anything more useful, muttered under her breath, "Bastard!" Ming'an raised an eyebrow. Was she really cursing him? Her flushed, irritated but helpless expression amused him. He paused, then remembered something and grinned. "Oh, by the way," he said, "that pain just now could have been avoided." Snow Empress froze, then her eyes widened. "Then why didn't you avoid it?" "You didn't let me finish speaking at the time," Ming'an replied, spreading his hands in an innocent, almost teasing gesture. Snow Empress went utterly still. She saw his expression, and the memory of how she had told him to just do it rushed back. Her face colored faintly, her fists clenched until the knuckles went white. She stood there, her cheeks flushed, flustered, and stubborn, too proud to admit anything, yet not quite able to hide it. Inside a clean, orderly single dormitory at the Sun Moon Royal Soul Engineer Academy in the capital city, a young girl stood at the window, staring out. Her hair fell long and flowed in a wash of blue and pink, as if spun from the morning light and the clear sky. Her eyes matched that same blue-pink gradient, sparkling when she blinked. She was strikingly beautiful. Her features were delicate, and although she was still young, her figure was already developing. She wore the Academy's blue and white uniform, fitted to her, and white stockings that emphasized her youth and energy. This was Wang Donger. Her gaze swept over the city beyond the glass, a metropolis of metal and spirit tool technology, bathed in morning sun. Towering spirit tool spires caught the light, and a steady stream of spirit tool vehicles threaded the streets below in an ordered procession, a world away from where she had grown up. She exhaled, feeling the tension she had carried for so long finally ease. From the Clear Sky Sect to Maple Leaf City, and then to the capital, she had been traveling for months, and at last she had arrived. The trip had been smoother than she'd expected. When she was hungry, she'd find fruit trees or manageable wild beasts. When she was tired, kind strangers would offer a ride or a place to sleep, and even the heavily guarded borders of the Sun Moon Empire posed no problem. In short, her luck had been very good. Her purpose for coming to the capital was clear. She had come to find her big father and second father. Despite her nominal elders insisting they were dead, she refused to believe it. She had a feeling they were merely trapped somewhere and still alive. She would find them herself, following every clue. Joining the Sun Moon Royal Soul Engineer Academy was the first step. Though she arrived outside the usual enrollment season and was slightly younger than most new students, revealing her radiant goddess butterfly spirit, her innate full spirit power, and a two-ring configuration, one yellow and one purple, won immediate, exceptional admission. An hour after her entrance examination, a senior student arrived with 3 sets of the academy uniform tailored to her size, various daily necessities, and a rundown of campus information. It was clear the school valued her. On the bedside table sat a brand new spirit tool communicator, one of her enrollment benefits. She glanced at it and felt a faint nausea rise in her chest, an instinctive aversion she'd had since birth. Spirit tools made her uneasy in a way that seemed to come from the depths of her soul. Looking at them for too long felt wrong. Since arriving in the capital, where spirit tools were everywhere, that aversion had lessened, but it was still there. She knew this dislike made the manufacturing path out of the question. Soul engineers split into 2 tracks: spirit tool manufacturers, who design, inscribe, and forge devices, and spirit tool operators, who use them in battle or support roles. Advancement depended on rank exams. Second-year students needed to reach rank 2 as engineers or operators, and by the 6th year, exceptional graduates could enter Ming'an Hall, the holy land for soul engineers, for further study and even receive an independent workshop. Given her repulsion to making spirit tools, operation was the only realistic route, and after a period of forced adaptation, she could tolerate that. "The first step is done," Wang Donger whispered to herself. "Now I must study spirit tools, strengthen myself, and find Big Father and Second Father." She breathed deeply, pinched her cheeks to rouse herself, and let the momentary softness harden into resolve. She was no longer the Clear Sky sect's young lord. No one would clean up after her mistakes now. She had to solve problems herself and work hard. Glancing at the spirit tool wall clock, she saw it was getting late. She grabbed the prepared bread on her desk, bit into it, and hurried out. The new student cohort had already been on campus for months. She needed to catch up. She ran down the dorm corridor, still chewing, and nearly collided with two people at the entrance. Instinctively, she froze and released her spirit. The magnificent wings of the radiant goddess butterfly bloomed behind her in a wash of blue, pink, and gold light, dreamlike and iridescent. With a gentle beat, she shot upward, gliding over the heads of the two students and landing lightly. "I'm sorry," she called, immediately retracting her spirit, then dashed toward the teaching building. Certain areas forbade using spirit or spirit tool flight, and she didn't want to break rules on her first day. A short while later, she reached the classroom. It was still early. She found a seat and opened the thick volume titled Basic Principles and Operational Overview of Spirit Tools. The diagrams and formulas made her head swim, but she forced herself to read. After only a little while, two figures entered the room who caught her attention, the same two she'd nearly run into earlier. One had black hair and black eyes, a cool, aloof air that carried a faint nobility. The other was tall and slender, with long golden hair and ruby-bright eyes. She had a heroic bearing and exceptional beauty. After hesitating a moment, Wang Donger stood and walked over to them. "Hello," she said politely. "My name is Wang Donger. I'm very sorry about almost running into you at the entrance just now." The two girls paused. The black-haired girl studied Wang Donger for 2 seconds and then answered in a calm, cool voice, "Gu Yue." The golden-haired girl seemed slightly surprised that the dark-haired girl had spoken, but she smiled and followed with her own name, cheerful and bold. "I am Ancient Autumn." After introducing themselves, the two girls moved to the other side of the classroom and took their seats. Wang Donger watched them walk away without giving it much thought and went straight back to her seat to keep cramming spirit tool theory, trying to catch up with the class. Nearby, Guyue separated her voice from the others and in a low tone told Ancient Autumn, "Keep an eye on Wang Donger for now, but don't interact with her too much." Ancient Autumn frowned. "Sister Sovereign, why? Is there something unusual about her?" "Her soul carries a faint trace of divine sense," Guya replied quietly. "By the aura, it belongs to the sea god from 10,000 years ago." Ancient Autumn's eyes widened. "The sea god? A divinity from the god realm?" She hesitated, then her expression turned serious. "Then, should we? No." Guyo shook her head and turned a page in the book she was holding. "There's an imprint of fate on her, obvious if you look carefully, but subtle, like a last-minute arrangement. It looks less like the work of a person and more like the plain will itself. Possibly an opportunity or trial sent over for that son of destiny." She paused, her voice even. "You can vaguely sense the direction of the son of destiny through that arranged trajectory, but it's hard to find his exact location. If we can use the fate trace on her, it might be easier to locate him." Ancient Autumn understood and nodded. "I see. I'll find a chance to get close to her." Guyue returned to her book, expression calm. The volume was made of special material and titled Elementary Spirit Ring Interpretation. She and Ancient Autumn had enrolled earlier than Wang Donger. Guyue had personally arranged flawless disguises for both of them, so their apparent ages and displayed cultivation levels matched perfectly. She had subtly revealed her exceptional talent in mental force and spirit tool crafting, and received a modest allocation of resources, and a recruitment offer from an internal club called Sun Moon. Guyue looked into the club and learned it had been formed less than a year ago, but had quickly absorbed several of the Academy's outstanding clubs. Rumor had it the Dean, Jing Hongchen, had backed it. Its members were mostly the Academy's exceptional students and talents, drawn from the Sun Moon Royal Soul Engineer Academy. To better blend in as human students, Guyu and Ancient Autumn had joined. After signing a strictly confidential agreement, they gained access to the cultivation materials the club circulated. "Spell cultivator," Guyu murmured. fingertips tracing theories on the page that overturned many conventional Spirit Master doctrines. She glanced at the book Ancient Autumn was studying, Body Cultivator Detailed Explanation, Elementary. Body Cultivator, she said aloud. Ancient Autumn had reported that the Body Cultivator path fit her Golden Dragon martial soul exceptionally well. Guye was curious too, but the agreement she had signed barred her from accessing that section. She could have wiped the restriction, but doing so would trigger alarms and risk exposure. Controlling her curiosity, she returned to the spell cultivator material in her hands. Spirit rings, stripping residual souls, modularizing them, self-condensing. Could it really work like that? A faint violet glimmer flickered deep in Guyue's black eyes. The theory fascinated her. She couldn't be certain who had written these subversive ideas, but her intuition whispered they were probably connected to the Son of Destiny, someone who had accumulated enormous luck. Her interest sharpened. She found herself looking forward to meeting this so-called child of destiny. Time passed, and things around the lab shifted ever so slightly. Under the cool fluorescent lights, the room felt peaceful. A petite girl in an elegant white and green dress perched on the edge of a cold workbench, her sheer black stockings covering small, swinging feet. Her toes tapped against a cluster of light blue energy models arrayed beside the youth bent over the desk. She propped one hand on the countertop and idly toyed with a stack of well-thumbed storybooks beside her, gifts from the youth who had feared she'd be bored. She had devoured them, but they were all read through multiple times, and the boy, absorbed in his work, had forgotten to replenish her supply. She puffed one cheek and watched him. The hours she'd spent assigned as his guard had given her a clear picture of Kong Ming'an's routine. His life was terrifyingly regular, drawing and writing on the workbench's light screen, surrounded by countless strange structures sketched in blue energy lines. He was different from other humans. Most people didn't spend all day cooped up in a lab. But he had one redeeming quality. He never brushed off her questions. If she asked something, he always answered carefully. She used the stack of storybooks as a cushion, resting her hand on top and cupping her chin. Her gaze softened as she traced the youth's profile, long lashes casting faint shadows, lips slightly pursed with concentration. His handsome features took on an extra hush when he was deep in thought. She couldn't help being a little captivated. He looked far more composed working quietly than when he was hunched over a carving knife operating on her. Kong Ming'an's movements slowed. The faint blue stream that had been in his eyes dimmed, and his expression relaxed back into its usual, clear, everyday look. The girl's heart skipped. She grabbed a book and pretended to flip through it, head bowed. Then, cool and indifferent, she asked, "You're done?" Kong Ming'an turned his head. His gaze flicked to the upside-down book in her hand. He reached over, righted it, and said, "Elder Yi has come out of seclusion. Come with me to see him." "Oh," the girl started, cheeks warming. She began to offer an explanation, but Kong Ming'an had already turned and was walking toward the exit. Wait for me," she called, leaping off the bench and hurrying after him. He didn't look back, but he subtly slowed so she could catch up and fall into step at his side. "Listen, what happened a moment ago was an accident," she blurted as they walked. I believe you," Kong Ming'an replied without turning his head. She clenched her fists. That look, he clearly didn't believe her. Chapter 93, Fusion Limit Elevation Method. A moment later, they stood before the thick metal door of Electrolux's laboratory. Kong Ming'an injected a pulse of spirit power to pass the verification. The heavy door slid open soundlessly. He stepped inside without hesitation, ignoring the Ice Empress pouting behind him as if she wanted to punch him. At first, she hadn't sensed anything through the door, but once they were inside, a deep, deathly silent aura filled the laboratory. It tugged at an old, uneasy memory, evil spirit beasts, evil soul masters, but threaded through that darkness was a faint glimmer of light. The Ice Empress frowned and moved closer to Ming'an, instinctively taking half a step behind him the way the Snow Empress would. Since the Snow Empress was absent, she would have to assume her duties. Her golden eyes swept the room, wary and curious. They followed the corridor into the inner lab, and a figure in a loose gray robe turned slowly. The man had long, flowing gray-white hair and golden eyes that seemed to have seen centuries, carrying an air of immense wisdom. Ming'an hesitated a beat before speaking. Elder Electrolux? Electrolux laughed. What, you don't recognize me just because I changed my appearance? His voice didn't match his youthful look. There was the familiar aged cadence Ming'an knew. It was Electrolux. A hint of curiosity crossed Ming'an's face. What is this? This is actually thanks to you. Electrolux smiled calmly and began to explain. Your elementalization theory in the spell cultivator system gave me the foundation. I reverse engineered it, combined it with some new insights I developed about the law of life and death, and built a method to reconstruct and stabilize a physical body using elements. Essentially, the body is rebuilt with light elements as bone, undead power as flesh and blood, and a strand of my divine sense bound as the core. He skimmed over the deep technical principles and risks, giving the general idea. Ming'an listened, thoughtful. The method definitely had potential. If refined, it could reinforce both elementalization and chi and blood transformation. After this seclusion, I'll organize my findings and hand them to you, Electrolux added. The procedures, energy conversion, matter construction, soul anchoring, should be useful references. As if reading Ming'an's mind, Electrolux waved a hand and 9 gray spirit rings rose silently from beneath his feet. They pulsed slowly, exuding that same sacred, deathly stillness that had filled the room. The Ice Empress snapped to full alert, facing a human powerhouse. Even an ally demanded vigilance. Ming'an paid the aura no outward mind. Pale blue light flickered in his eyes. He was seeing the energy structure of the rings. Surprise crossed his face. Hundreds of thousands of years spirit rings, every one of Electrolux's 9 rings had reached or exceeded the 100,000-year level. Electrolux smiled and began to explain. During this seclusion, I achieved 2 main things. The first I call the fusion limit elevation method. He paced through the idea. It's based on spirit ring fusion, inspired by the spirit ring limit elevation technique from the body sect you told me about. The method permanently raises the lifespan limit of a primary spirit ring and increases the load limit of a soul skill module through fusion. The fused spirit ring is indistinguishable from a normal spirit ring. He pointed to the rings now orbiting him. These were elevated by this method, but the method has 2 clear limits. First, the burden on the physical body is huge. The extra energy capacity that comes with increased spirit ring lifespan is a tremendous strain for spell cultivators. Early on, they focus on spirit and control, and their physical bodies are relatively fragile. I recommend attempting this only after you have obtained a 7th spirit ring, mastered elementalization, and achieved a qualitative improvement in your energy control. Body cultivators, whose bodies are already robust, could probably try it earlier. Second, Electrolux continued, there's a lifespan ceiling. From tests, spirit rings under 1,000,000 years seem theoretically achievable with this method, but very high lifespan rings demand extremely high physical fitness and astronomical energy to condense, so I don't recommend chasing 1,000,000-year rings yet. For now, I suggest aiming for 900,000-year spirit rings before attempting further increases. Ming'an's mind stirred. He thought of Skydream, Tianmeng, probably still on the outskirts of the Stardew Great Forest. A 1,000,000-year spirit beast could provide invaluable reference. Perhaps he could be coaxed out to aid their research. Ming'an folded the thought away for later. He also thought about his own progress. Though he no longer cultivated in the conventional way, his sacred guidance soul ring cultivated automatically, and his spirit power had been rising quickly. His precise control over energy let him push the ring's power high without losing control. By Ming'an's rough estimate, he'd likely reach the titled Douluo level around 16 or 17, adequate for tackling advanced trials soon. Electrolux nodded at Ming'an's expression and added one more thing. I haven't tried condensing a 1,000,000-year spirit ring. There's a lack of reference, and the energy required to form even one is astronomical. I suspect the 1,000,000-year mark is a qualitative threshold that may touch the domain of gods. If we can secure enough resources later, I plan further research. Ming'an absorbed the information. Electrolux smiled, then shifted to the next topic. My second major achievement actually comes in 2 versions, though they share the same essence. He paused, then began to outline them. One is the self-condensing soul ring method, and the other is the condensing soul ring method. Chapter 94, the self-condensing spirit ring method and the condensing soul ring method. As everyone knows, when a spirit master hits a bottleneck, they must hunt and slay a spirit beast to take and absorb a spirit ring before they can raise their spirit power rank. The self-condensing spirit ring method, however, imitates the way spirit beasts form and condense their own rings. By shaping and controlling their spirit power, a practitioner can condense a spirit ring themselves. The effective age of a ring condensed this way depends on how much spirit power the spirit master can supply, and because the process bypasses absorption, the ring is already fused to the user the moment it is formed. Because the ring is born of the user's own spirit power, compatibility problems vanish. The only real concern is whether the body can withstand the burden. For a spell cultivator, such rings are also more convenient when modifying a sacred guidance soul ring. Electrolux paused and then switched to the crucial caveat, but the threshold for this is high. Condensing a spirit ring requires solidified spirit power. It demands extremely precise control and a profound self-understanding. At present, the method requires a spirit master from the traditional system, a titled Douluo, someone who has condensed a soul core and already has experience manipulating solidified spirit power. The awkward part is that most titled Douluo, unless they possess twin spirits, no longer rely on spirit rings themselves, so the method's position is somewhat problematic. I haven't finished optimizing it. He hesitated, then slowly raised a hand. Gray strands of spirit power gathered and took shape. In an instant, a faintly white, 10-year spirit ring hung in his palm. Kong Ming'an watched closely, the technique Electrolux used flashing through his mind. Electrolux continued. This is the second method, the condensing soul ring method. Like the self-condensing method, it requires a titled Douluo to execute. The difference is that a ring condensed by this method is independent. It can be absorbed by any spirit master. If left unabsorbed, these rings will usually dissipate naturally after about half a day. This method pairs perfectly with the fusion limit raising method. By repeatedly condensing rings and fusing them to raise the age limit of the main spirit ring, you create a closed loop that can gradually push the ring toward the upper limit the user can bear. My current 900,000-year spirit rings were achieved this way. He sighed slightly. I also don't recommend using spirit rings from dead spirit beasts as raw material for raising a ring's age limit. When you fuse those rings, all the useless memories and soul skill modules from the beast's rings merge into the main ring too. Cleaning that out wastes time, and the impact of the fusion process can destabilize existing soul skill modules, creating hidden dangers. Compared to fusing spirit beast rings, condensing artificial spirit rings with your own spirit power is far more efficient. The Ice Empress had long since given up trying to follow the technical talk. In the short time she'd spent with Kong Ming'an, she'd learned the only workable strategy was to tune it all out. If she tried to follow it, her brain would inevitably lock up. She glanced sideways at Kong Ming'an, his eyes faintly glowing, his expression one of complete comprehension, and couldn't help curling her lips. Am I really that dumb? No, right? She doubted herself. Kong Ming'an noticed nothing. His attention was entirely on the fruits of Electrolux's seclusion. As he thought, he felt the expected certainty settle over him. As expected, Elder Yi is still Elder Yi. These findings, especially the synergy between the fusion limit raising method and the condensing soul ring method, almost instantly strengthened the spell cultivator system. More importantly, the combination could link to the subsequent star ring technique, completing the spell cultivator framework and pointing the way to its peak. Its value was incalculable. A little later, Kong Ming'an and the Ice Empress left Electrolux's lab and returned to Kong Ming'an's own workshop. Electrolux had gone back into seclusion. The two of them had exchanged everything. Electrolux had handed over all he had learned during seclusion, and Kong Ming'an had given Electrolux the results he had developed in the same period. Work on the new soul core, the star ring, the ascension stairway concept, the spirit power deification concept, and so on. Electrolux had been inspired and immediately plunged back into research. The Ice Empress could only fume silently. There really weren't many ordinary people around this group. Kong Ming'an waved her off. Don't make a fuss. Research works like this: verification, discussion, fusion. Especially when you work in the same domain, one person's results can patch another's flaws. Isolation won't help. The collision of ideas is the right Tao. The lab lights were cool, but compared with Electrolux's space, the Ice Empress felt more comfortable here. She hopped up onto a workbench, supporting herself with both hands on the edge and leaning forward slightly, her small feet swinging. Her golden eyes settled on the youth in the chair, the pale blue light still flowing in his gaze. She knew he was hitting another inspiration wave. He had no time for chit-chat. Tsk. She curled her lips, her delicate face showing displeasure. Of course, just as she had thought, after taking in Electrolux's results, Kong Ming'an had dived into deep analysis. He was breaking the material down, correlating it, summarizing. Then, Kong Ming'an's thoughts returned to the Spirit Ring three-element theory he had proposed long ago. In that model, he broke a spirit ring into three components: spirit power as the carrier, memory as the soul skill module, and the soul as the trigger. He had known then that the theory was crude. It left large blind spots, especially about how a spirit ring interacts with a spirit master's own spirit. At the time, he hadn't had the leisure to refine it. Practical application took priority, but now he felt the theory needed patching. When a spirit master obtains a spirit ring, there are 2 points you can never ignore, Kong Ming'an murmured, his expression turning deep as his consciousness slipped into inner reflection. 2 points in total: the partial directivity of the spirit ability, how the spirit adapts and is modified, and the spirit evolution brought about by the ring's attachment. First point: partial directionality of spirit abilities and spirit adaptation modification. On the Douluo continent, people like to call the process of absorbing a spirit ring random, but that isn't entirely accurate. Take an attack-type spirit master hunting a power-type spirit beast and obtaining a spirit ring as an example. As an attack type, he won't want a defensive or auxiliary ability. Deep down, he desires a strong offensive skill. From that desire, a personal will is born. That will subtly influences the remnant soul within the spirit ring, while the spirit master absorbs it, nudging the remnant soul to favor soul skill modules, memories, that align with the spirit master's intent. After that, the spirit master's own spirit power intervenes in the ring's solidification, like a craftsman fine-tuning and optimizing the chosen module, imprinting it with his own spirit so the ability fits perfectly. A clear example is the White Tiger Dai clan of the Starluo Empire. Along with their inherited White Tiger spirit, they have the same 3 White Tiger cleaves unchanged for 10,000 years. White Tiger Barrier, White Tiger Lightwave, and White Tiger Vajra Transformation. Because the White Tiger spirit and its descendants draw from the same source, absorb similar beasts, and are guided by a consistent clan will, the spirit abilities that emerge are highly similar and perfectly matched to the spirit's nature. That aside, the real focus is the second point: spirit evolution caused by spirit ring attachment. Spirits can undergo acquired evolution. Cases aren't countless, but they aren't rare either. Outside of evolutions triggered by consuming certain heaven and earth treasures, most evolutions happen after absorbing spirit rings. Tongsan from 10,000 years ago is a famous example. Every time his blue-silver grass absorbed a ring from a different spirit beast, the grass itself changed, gaining poisonous traits, increasing toughness, and so on. That proves one thing clearly: absorbing spirit rings can drive changes in a spirit. So what's the mechanism? After thinking it through, Kong Ming'an divided it into 2 parts. The first is fusion with the spirit beast's remnant soul. When a spirit master integrates a ring, the spirit instinctively devours or fuses part of the remnant soul inside it. This is akin to forced assimilation. Once absorbed, elements of the remnant soul, perhaps an elemental tendency or a shift in form, will subtly influence the spirit, prompting mutation or evolution. This also explains why spirit masters can use the ability contained in a ring almost immediately. The beast's remnant soul in the ring has already been partially tamed and subordinated by the spirit, becoming an integrated tool rather than a foreign memory. The second part is the spirit absorbing the ring's energy and evolving under that energy's impetus. When a ring is absorbed, the spirit master often breaks through bottlenecks and gains spirit power. That confirms that the pure energy inside the ring is shared by the Spirit Master and the Spirit. Some of it raises the Master's spirit power rank, while the rest is taken by the Spirit as nourishment for its essential leap. With that framework, especially the idea that Spirit Ring energy can promote spirit evolution, and re-evaluating Electrolux's condensing soul ring method, Kong Ming'an suddenly lightened. He saw a previously unimagined possibility. First, there are direct benefits of the condensing soul ring method for spell cultivators. The artificial spirit ring produced by this method contains no spirit beast remnant soul, and therefore no spirit ability by default. That's practically useless to traditional spirit masters, but for spell cultivators, it's a tailor-made carrier. They can skip the tedious, time-consuming step of clearing a beast's useless memories and instead condense their own researched or optimized soul skill module onto a blank ring. If the spirit power used to condense the ring comes from the spell cultivator, the imprinting becomes even easier and far more efficient. Combine that with the imprinting tool Kong Ming'an was developing and the model Artificial Spirit Ring plus one-click imprint spirit ability could become possible. That would let traditional spirit masters transition smoothly into the spell cultivator imprint faction, lowering the barrier to entry for spell cultivators and accelerating the spread of the system. That prospect alone hinted at a likely future for spell cultivators. But the second point Kong Ming'an devised was even more revolutionary: the directional guidance effect of artificial rings on spirit evolution. Traditional rings drive evolution through the dual effects of the beast's remnant soul and the ring's energy. While you can roughly predict the direction, there is still randomness. An artificial ring is condensed from pure spirit power and contains no remnant soul. For a traditional spirit master, that's a disadvantage. Without the remnant soul, they can't operate the ring and use the ability in the usual, standardized way. Viewed differently, though, the absence of the remnant soul eliminates one of the two uncontrollable mutation factors. The remaining factor, the energy put into the artificial ring, is controllable. You can choose who condenses it, how it's condensed, and what kind of energy is infused. An idea crystallized in Kong Ming'an's mind. Suppose, setting aside issues of conflicting attributes, an ice attribute spirit master absorbed an artificial ring condensed by the Snow Empress using her extreme ice spirit power. Would that spirit change? The answer is obvious: yes. If one ring isn't enough, absorb more. Let that ice attribute Spirit Master's 1st through 9th rings be condensed entirely from spirit power saturated with extreme ice. Under those conditions, a spirit that once had only mediocre ice attributes could be pushed to transform into true extreme ice. It could be even more specific. Ling Luochen, the Shrek Academy student with an ice element spirit, achieved attribute sublimation into extreme ice in the original story with temporary help from Huo Yuhao. Her ice attribute was already strong. If she absorbed even one artificial ring, or better yet several, condensed entirely from spirit power that carried extreme ice attributes, her spirit would almost certainly evolve in that direction. This is a viable, controllable path for spirit evolution. Chapter 96: Attribute-Guided Evolution and Bloodline-Guided Evolution. Kong Ming'an's breath hitched. After conceiving attribute-guided evolution, his inspiration didn't stop. It spread and deepened. Within a few breaths, he had conceived another way to use a spirit ring to push a spirit's evolution, the Chi and Blood Soul Ring. In Electrolux's condensing soul ring method, making a spirit ring requires the condenser's spirit power, but at root what is needed is energy. Chi, blood energy, and bloodline power are all forms of energy and therefore open to manipulation. Since the Chi and Blood Soul Ring already existed, combining the two concepts, using a Chi and Blood Ring to guide a spirit's evolution, suddenly seemed possible. One could weave a spirit ring from someone else's Chi, blood energy, and bloodline power for a spirit to absorb, prompting that spirit to evolve in a particular direction. For example, suppose Ming'an extracted a reserve of his bloodline power, the holy light dragon essence within it, and condensed that into a special Chi and Blood Soul Ring for Beibei to absorb. Could Beibei's blue lightning tyrant dragon spirit, upon fusing with a Chi and Blood Ring derived from a top-tier spirit of the same lineage, stabilize the holy light dragon bloodline and transform into a blue lightning holy light tyrant dragon, or even directly evolve into a true holy light dragon. It seemed completely feasible, and the loss of bloodline power is recoverable for most powerful individuals. Their reserves can renew. Even if they were unwilling to part with their living power, they could instead provide their blood. Draw a little blood each day until a substantial reserve is accumulated. Extract the bloodline power from that blood and condense the chi and blood soul ring. The impact on most donors would be negligible. Deming and Ming were a living example. Stationed in the undead demiplane, they were routinely bled while guarding it, yet both remained vigorous. If this idea could be made real, top-tier powerhouses could contribute renewable blood to extract bloodline power and produce exclusive spirit rings for their descendants, guiding their spirits toward a chosen bloodline. For families with spirit master legacies, that would nearly guarantee continuity. For ordinary spirit masters, it would break the bottleneck imposed by spirit quality and open the way to higher ranks. Ming'an's thoughts expanded further. If this method were popularized, spirit development would no longer be limited by innate spirit quality. By scientifically matching man-made spirit rings of different attributes and bloodline sources, a spirit could be assembled step by step, a programmable, visualized spirit evolution sequence. Hobbyists and researchers would exchange their sequences. There are no trash spirits, only spirit masters who don't know how to plan their evolution sequence. 100 days of research, and I want my spirit to evolve. Please, brother, share your spirit evolution sequence. Urgent. An era of universal spirit quality leaps might be dawning. Ming'an's eyes flickered with eagerness. Then his face changed, a sharp thought sharpening his expression. The consequences for spirit beasts. Beast spirit masters account for a large portion of practitioners, and many of their spirits are mediocre. To evolve such spirits, they'd need huge amounts of material to make chi and blood rings. Sources might include buying the blood of powerful individuals, or, at the extreme, raiding other spirit masters and seizing their blood like evil soul masters. But the low-risk, socially acceptable alternative would be hunting spirit beasts. People feel little guilt killing beasts. Even mass slaughters draw only mild condemnation as bloodthirstiness toward animals, not vilification as evil soul masters. If this method spread, a tidal wave of spirit beast hunting, focused on advanced bloodline spirit beasts and vastly more efficient, would sweep the continent. Spirit beasts' extinction rates would skyrocket. Ming'an clicked his tongue. Not long ago, he'd thought his breakthrough in the mutual conversion between humans and spirit beasts might earn him the Douluo Peace Prize. Now, if he propagated this idea, the very prize would have to be taken back. The world was unpredictable, and as the child of destiny, he couldn't endorse something so irresponsible. He had to fulfill his duties. Since purifying the soul-devouring carving knife, the plane will had been everywhere. Electrolux appearing through a sudden spatial rift, the thorny dragon fitting his needs perfectly, the Snow Empress emerging early, the plane had handed him opportunities. He wasn't ungrateful. He had to be careful with what he spread. Research this method, yes, but do not publicize it. The attribute-guided transformation part, though, could be implemented first. He decided to leave the matter to the Ming'an Chamber of Commerce, get results first, then discuss it with Juzi. Ming'an looked up and found the petite girl on the workbench beside him, staring at him with golden eyes. She had been watching the whole time. The moment stretched. The Ice Empress glared. "Why are you looking at me?" Ming'an, a little embarrassed, held out his hand. "Give me some of your blood, preferably a lot of bloodline power. I need to run an experiment." "You expect me to just hand it over?" The Ice Empress bristled. He made it sound simple. "It counts as value points," Ming'an said plainly. Silence. After a beat, she sliced her fingertip and a bead of blood, radiating bone-deep cold, hovered in his palm. "Not enough," he said. "Give me more." The Ice Empress ground her teeth. Then she thought of value points, of the energy she needed to become a god. She swallowed her pride and conceded, for now. She would grow stronger, and when she did, she would certainly make this man pay, knock him to his knees, and humiliate him in return. More than 2 years had slipped by in quiet research. On the top floor of the Ming'an Chamber of Commerce headquarters in Shrek City, A spacious office lay bathed in a faint, calming scent of sandalwood. The room was simply furnished, but tasteful, comfortable at first glance. Miss Ning, this is the Ming'an Chamber of Commerce's most sincere offer to the 9-treasure glazed tile school. What do you think? A cool voice asked, breaking the gentle hush. The woman speaking sat in the main chair. Her chestnut hair fell long and straight, a pair of half-rimmed glasses perched on her nose. Behind the lenses, her eyes were steady and composed. She wore a tailored dark suit that gave her an intellectual, composed air, but her words left no room for compromise. She fixed a slightly expectant gaze on the elegant woman opposite her, Ning Fengya, current sectmaster of the 9-treasure glazed tile school. President Juzi offers generous compensation. I can find no reason to refuse, Ning Fengya replied with a light laugh, then grew a shade more serious. I, Ning Fengya, as sectmaster of the 9-treasure glazed tile school, hereby represent the school and agree to this business arrangement. Juzi's lips curved in a polite smile. A pleasure to cooperate, Schoolmaster Ning. She waved her hand once over the table. More than a dozen jade boxes materialized there like summoned coins. Ning Fengya's eyes fell to them at once. Though she had weathered the business world for years, even she could not completely hide the flicker of surprise crossing her face. This is, she began, seeking confirmation as much as asking. Blue Silver. Immortal Herb Series, Number 06, Blue Silver Chiluo Tulip, Juzi answered calmly. Ning Fengya paused, letting the name settle. The Chiluo Tulip was the legendary immortal herb that, 10,000 years ago, had enabled her ancestor Ning Rongrong's 7-treasure glazed tile pagoda to evolve into the 9-treasure glazed tile pagoda. It had been the obsession of her school for generations, sought for 10 millennia without success. Juzi had already explained that these were not originals but a cultivated subspecies, a blue-silver Chiluo tulip produced by special techniques, possessing only 1/10 to 1/5 of the original herb's potency. Even so, that fraction might be enough to break the shackles on their 7-treasure glazed tile spirit. A chance to end a 10,000-year obsession passed down through her school trembled on the edge of possibility. Ning Fengya's mind raced, but she kept her expression calm. She collected the jade boxes with a composed gesture. If this specimen proves effective, she said, the 9-treasure glazed tile school will honor its commitments. Schoolmaster Ning, you take your words seriously, Yuzi replied with a smile. As long as you keep your promise, that will be enough. Ning Fengya inclined her head. Over the past 2 years, the Ming'an Chamber of Commerce had grown at an astonishing rate. After forming a tripartite alliance with the Body Sect and the Tianhun Imperial family, and with the Body Sect's decisive entry into Shrek City, while Shrek Academy looked on without intervening, the Chamber had seized a powerful momentum. With the tacit approval and backing of the Tianhun royals, the Chamber had used ruthless efficiency to integrate key industries across the empire. Its spirit tools and pharmaceuticals, offered at impossibly low prices, durable and effective, and bolstered by varieties of artificially cultivated heaven and earth treasures, had pushed established competitors back and nearly monopolized the market. The 9-treasure glazed tile school had been among those forced to yield. There had been grumbling within her school. Some members even regarded the Ming'an Chamber of Commerce as their chief enemy. But the Body Sect's presence made direct opposition impossible. Ning Fengya had not expected the Chamber to approach them so soon with an invitation to cooperate or to bring information about immortal herbs. She had come forward, not from weakness but from calculation. Better to cooperate than to be crushed. Perhaps a deep alliance could enable her school to rise again. Of course, such a decision could not rest solely on her shoulders. The herb had to be taken back, its effects verified, then presented and discussed with the school elders. With that crucial matter settled, the two women loosened and began to finish their polite conversation. Ning Tian, who had accompanied his mother to gain experience, sat quietly at their side, listening intently. As the school's next successor, listening and learning were fundamental. His mind tracked the Chamber's overt structure. Vice President Juzi orchestrated most public affairs and held immense operational power. The only other known figure was Poison Immortal, a fearsome titled Douluo from the Body Sect who had clashed publicly with Shrek's Tauti Douluo Xuanzi, the chamber's chief enforcer, responsible for internal discipline and external threats. No one knew much about the chamber's president. That absence of information bred rumor. Ning Tian couldn't help but wonder what kind of person had built the chamber so rapidly. The meeting wound down. Juzi stood with a formal smile. "Schoolmaster Ning, I'll see you out." "President Juzi is very busy. Please don't trouble yourself," Ning Fengya returned with a graceful smile. They exchanged the customary pleasantries. Then, without warning, the air in the center of the office rippled like a disturbed pond. A figure folded into being, pale-faced and wearing a simple white mask that hid all features save a pair of black eyes, which blinked with a flash surprise. From Ning Fengya's shadow, another form exploded out, shrouding her and Ning Tian. The aura of a titled Douluo flared as the dark figure assumed a defensive posture, cutting off the newcomer. "It seems I've interrupted you," said a clear young voice from beneath the white mask, with a faint note of apology. Ning Fengya's brow lifted briefly as she tried to place the youth. Juzi turned at once, then, without a trace of the earlier courtesy, curtly said, "Schoolmaster Ning, I won't see you out." Ning Fengya froze. If she remembered correctly, hadn't Juzi just offered to personally see her out?